Hey, friends. How's everyone doing today? Hope you're having a good one. Oh, today's been a weird day. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. We've had some weird occurrences. Okay, I've been doing a lot of research on tonight's topic. Our guest will be joining us shortly. Uh, but I want to impress upon you the fact that I, by no means, am an expert on this topic. What I'm doing today is I'm trying to learn. Okay, I'm trying to learn about the issues involved, and I think it's important to discuss. Right? It, again, just looking at the surface level of this, it seems horrific, dystopian. And we're gonna go through like the whys, the what, the who, the how, etc. But just keep in mind throughout that I am, again, not an expert. Wick wants to learn how to groom clipped. Oh, great. Gonna be one of those. Yeah. I guess we'll see how it goes. How's everyone, by the way? I got this nice little milkshake here. It's really delicious from the farmer's market. I like it a lot. Okay. I like it a lot. It's a happy day. No, it's snowed a little bit today. It's been a good day. Weird, but good. I think I got called a gang rape denialist. I'm not sure if it was me or Lonerbox or someone got called a gang rape denialist, and I don't know why. I'm not sure. Sargon of Akkad, we invited him on, and he's still welcome to come on. But like, at what point? I just want to know who he thinks is a rape denialist. To be honest, it's a crazy thing to say, right? It's wild to just come out and accuse people of that. Look, I'm not British. I didn't know what was going on. Why would I, right? It's not a denialist because I don't know every single thing that happens in every single country. Did he think I was someone else? Like, I look like, look, I have a very common feature list. Glasses, beard, hoodie, okay? It's not exactly a unique look. So maybe he thought I was someone else. I don't know. Are we talking about Tommy Robinson? We're going to talk about Tommy Robinson tonight. Again, someone I don't know much about, but I would like to learn more about. I've heard a lot about him, right, from various sides, and I kind of want to just go through it. Kay says, weren't a lot of the facts about this not public until recently? I think a lot of people didn't know what was happening. It's being brought to light in a way that it hasn't before. A lot of reporters have come out. I've read some articles from various reporters saying that a lot of people just didn't report on this. There is accusations of a cover-up, frankly. And again, I'm not sure how accurate those accusations are, but that's one of those things that we're going to talk about tonight, right? It's one of those things we're going to explore. Like, how much of an issue was it? Are they all downstairs? Hold on. By downstairs, I mean in the lower discords. Give me a second. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I wanted to. HTID Tricky says, watch Truth and Lies about Grooming Gangs inquiry, 10-minute vid from a different bias. Well, I don't. I prefer conversations to watching a documentary or a video, right? It's just how I learn. And so I thought it would be interesting, it would be informative perhaps, for me to publicly learn about the situation. Like I've gotten the basics from my own research, but to kind of get into the nitty-gritty, I thought you guys would enjoy having me on and inviting people with different views on this to come on and kind of talk me through it. I thought that might be interesting. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe you guys won't like that. I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out. Hello, NOK Life. Hello, Greens of Plenty. Hello, Esperance. Hello, Portland is Burning. Hello, K. Hello, hello, Lumines. Hello, HTID Triggy. Zephyr Hash. Psychonaut. Average Debate Enjoyer. Brew Crow. Nice to see you all again. Hopefully, we'll be starting when they get here. Okay. Counterpoints. I'm just gonna steal you away. Hold on. Boom.
And what's interesting is MIT. Oh, am I in a different room now?
Yeah, well, were you ready to come on? It is showtime. It's 6
No,
o'clock.
I'm ready. I can be ready. I was just telling the roost about electrogravitic propulsion.
Cool. No, that's interesting.
It's related to the Tesla IED.
1 second. See, I got well, I won't say a lot of trouble, but some people wagged their finger at me because I was waiting for more information before I called it a terrorist attack. And I thought that was weird. They're like, how can you not see that this is absolutely definitely an intentional bomb? Like, I didn't work with explosives. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, sorry, I was just getting my camera turned on and letting the dog in.
All good. Do your thing. Give me a second. Let me get these roosters in here. Get everyone. We are live, by the way. People can see, people can hear you. So no slurs, none of that. Yeah.
What platforms are we live on?
We're live on Twitch, Kick, and are you banned on Twitch or something?
No, just N-word with an A every now and then. Oh. Some F slurs every now and then.
Sure. Twitch, Kick, and YouTube is the platforms we're live on. So hi, how's it going? Lonerbox, nice to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
It's been a while. It's going well. It's a weird day today.
It is.
I'm not sure which one of us got called a rape denialist, but one of us definitely did. I'm not sure if it was you.
Oh, I'm sure Carl was saying it about Lonerbox. But I'm just gonna say it right now. Sargon's a fucking pussy. Okay, he's a fucking pussy. He what was it? It was probably like a year ago now. I was like, hey man, like your content is largely blackpilling like normie young men and basically telling them that the world is falling apart, and I think that's fucked up. And he was like, oh, I always knew you were a fraud and a grifter. Block. Fucking pussy.
Well, he's invited on tonight if he'd like to come. I don't know him, honestly, but I think he has an interesting perspective on this that we'll get to. But I guess let's start the show if everyone's ready. Dev, are you here? Can you hear us? Is everything good on your end?
I am here. Just let me tweet out that I'm going to be on here tonight.
Okay, sure. Excellent. But yeah.
Also, hi guys. What's up?
Evening.
I do appreciate you trying with the Sargon thing, by the way. Thanks for.
I no longer have any pull with him, I think. But oh well.
It is what it is. Okay, let's start the show. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Wick TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And tonight's topic is one of the more serious ones I've done. Recently, I have seen various reports come to light, various information that I had not been aware of regarding a scandal in Britain over grooming gangs. For those who aren't aware, there was a huge issue with grooming gangs of men, frankly, raping women, raping little girls in Britain. There have been accusations that this had been covered up. There have been accusations that this was swept under the rug because of potential for causing Islamophobia and these other things. There's a lot of noise out there, basically. And I wanted to bring people together who had some information on the subject at hand to discuss what happened, why it happened, how this monumental failure came to pass, and what is, if anything, is being done about it now. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I don't profess to be an expert in this, but I hope we can have an interesting conversation, maybe educate everyone about this. We'll find out. Lonerbox, what's going on in Britain? You're the British guy, or the Scottish guy here, but you're from Britain, right?
Yeah. Apparently it's been covered up, but also this is the one subset of child sexual abuse where every perpetrator is guaranteed a newspaper headline, despite the fact that there are about 6,000 plus people who get convicted of grooming and abusing children sexually every year. The only time they're ever guaranteed a newspaper headline is if they're Muslim and in a gang. That's just like part of what we do in the UK. All seriousness, the crimes are real. They're disgusting. The victims were let down by police and by counselors. There's some truth to the fact that some of it was because people did not know how to approach ethnic issues in terms of like going after people who were Muslim. And it's a real shame that these issues and all the hard work of care workers and researchers and experts has to get basically shafted by a bunch of cowardly Sargon of blockhead racist cunts who just want to weaponize the suffering of victims for scoring political points. These people don't give a fuck about anyone who's actually getting abused unless they can cynically weaponize it for political clout. But, you know.
Okay, well, we're going to get into that, right? I've heard a lot about this Tommy Robinson fellow, and I have some questions for you all, but yeah, we'll talk about it. Counterpoints, what are some of your thoughts here? What's going on in Britain?
No, I think that this has been swept under the rug. I think that if this was an American story, it would have been front page and center news. I also think that simultaneously, this should be front page and center news. So if you have people who are coming in from a different country, and by the way, this is the story as far as I understand it, is that you have 25 different towns identified. You have between like a few hundred and a few thousand victims per town. The people are largely Pakistani British people who have been here for sometimes for one generation, sometimes for multiple generations. Some of these people are citizens, right? But they have effectively seduced and groomed children who are between the ages of 10 and 18 who are in the foster care system. I think we would call it in the foster care system in the United States, and then recruited them in order to be prostitutes. And then they gang raped and pimped these girls out. And so it's a failure of institutions, sure, but it's also, I would say, a failure of culture on behalf of these men that they thought that this was appropriate in any way whatsoever. And then here's the other thing, and I'll try to wrap up. I know I'm known for being verbose, but basically we have multiple failures. We have failures of the guardians at the foster care system. We have failures of the parents to care about these children in the first place. We have failures from law enforcement who didn't want to investigate the issue because they basically wrote off these kids as working class, schlubby, prostitute kids anyways. Who gives a shit about them? They're working class from the wrong side of town. And then you also have the city councils failing, where they knew that this was a problem, but they failed to make it an issue because they were worried about their own reputation. So final failure. Last failure was the federal government, because at least in the United States, if the local municipalities fail, then the feds step in. And here, the federal government has basically said, no, it's the municipality's problem.
It's a lot. We'll get to it, and I want to kind of dig into the details as we go.
Please stop calling it the federal government, by the way. We're not a federal system. It's just parliament.
What central? What would you call it?
It's just parliament.
So yeah. Sorry, we'll talk about the Commonwealth's governmental organization in a bit, I'm sure.
Well, that won't help you because Canada actually is a federalized system, despite having a parliament.
Well, do you guys have as bad a grooming gang issues as the UK
No, we
does?
don't. No, we don't.
Okay, good.
I guess I think your description is mostly accurate, Connor. I think you might have just left out the part where there's an explicitly racial and religious component to the grooming, because if you read some of the transcripts of some of the court cases, you can hear them outright say, yeah, it's because they're white and Christian that we feel like we can do this to them.
Is that
Yes.
is that an actual thing? Like, this is one of the things that I've seen over and over again, at least when trying to research this. There's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of people, I think Lonerbox alluded to this, that say that this is being weaponized by racists, by the EDL, by others, extremist groups in Britain, in order to paint all immigrants as predators. Is there any truth to that? What do we think? Is this being overblown?
Well, it's true. So I'll give Lonerbox a little bit of wiggle room to play with. It's true that we have prostitution and we have criminal organizations across all ethnicities and religions. So, for instance, like we don't assign this level of malevolence to, let's say, Russian sex trafficking or Slavic sex trafficking, which is still like an aggressive, brutal, and violent sex trafficking organizations. We don't assign this religious component. But the reason why I think that the Western world is so repulsed by this is because we all know that those people are evil. We all know that they're disgusting and deserving of poor treatment and all that kind of shit. Whereas it seems like some of the perpetrators are cloaking themselves in religion as a pretext in which to conduct these acts, which is abhorrent.
Where are we getting this wrong, Lonerbox? Are we on track so far? Like, one of the reasons I brought you on is to
I just want to make sure we're all like in the same factual world. Do we all acknowledge the fact that of the total police data from the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, Asians and white people are about equally represented when it comes to proportionally represented when it comes to child sexual abuse offenses? Do we agree on that?
Okay. So, well, hold on. Then let's dig into the data if you have it at hand. So, is this equal statistically, or is it per capita equal?
Yeah, per capita. Yeah, that's what I mean by proportionally represented. Okay. Yeah, I can give you the.
So then going for proportional, are we taking because we're talking about a wide variety of crimes? Are we talking about familial pedophilia being made equivalent to criminal sex trafficking organizations? Because to me, these are two different problems.
We're talking about pedophile rings. We're talking about grooming gangs. We can talk about the difference between those groups if you want. We're talking about all child sexual abuse, the crime of child sexual abuse.
You just sent me your data, so I'll look at it while you continue.
Well, Dev, you know a lot about this data. Again, what would you say? Do you think that?
I actually haven't seen this data that Lonerbox is talking about, so I do want to see it.
Yeah, just put it in the group chat, and I guess they'll look. But let's assume that's the case.
I can also.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
All right. It's true that they were let down by cops and by counselors. Okay. We know that one of the reasons was because of cops, mainly cops, claiming to be worried about racial insensitivity. Okay. For some reason, in the year of the late 90s, early 2000s, or mid 2000s, the cops of South Yorkshire claimed to be worried about political correctness at a time when Little Britain was doing fucking blackface on primetime TV. For some reason, that was like a thing. But I don't feel like anyone ever mentions any of the other issues, the more clearly defined ones, which was the culture of victim blaming, which has been a problem with British police, particularly South Yorkshire, since at least the 1960s, probably even before, maybe even the 50s. It's also the case that there was a complete lack of communication. The reverse problem of like the ethnic issue was a lack of communication between the police and the Pakistani community. The only people they spoke to were like imams, like religious leaders who were men who didn't really care. There were Pakistani women's groups who felt disenfranchised because the authorities, the counselors, just didn't meet with them. They just didn't care. They only went for the most obvious like male figureheads. There was also the issue of complete under-resourcing. These are working class communities. There's like ridiculous statutes of limitations when it comes to making these complaints for rapes that happened like a few years ago. There are issues with a lack of outreach. There's issues with a lack of middlemen, that there's not really any middleman for a child victim to go to between themselves and the police, right?
Well, aren't you?
Because obviously
sorry,
you don't want to go
quick,
to the police if you're a fucking child,
just because
right?
You're because I'm looking at data and trying to listen to you at the same time. But aren't you kind of simultaneously saying, I would almost feel like, I don't want to necessarily say contradictory things. You might be able to parse these out, but these feel relatively contradictory. So you're saying that the police were saying that they felt like they were shackled by cultural sensitivities along ethnic lines. And then you're actually pointing out the fact that they only talk to imams. They only talk to male patriarchs. They only talk to, the heads of the, this like separate but parallel culture. And I would say that is probably stemming from the fact that if you talk to a woman without the man's permission within like a conservative Muslim enclave, that's going to be viewed as an insult to the man.
No, that's not why that happened. It happened because
Why not?
they just made the choice not to talk to them. Like the
well,
woman
that's
tried
the
to reach out.
question.
So they saw
Hold on,
a
if I may.
hijabi or
Hold on. To Lonerbox.
I'll press on that
Well,
for sure.
Yeah, in the
But
United
that's the
Kingdom, you
question.
can talk
Hold
to a
on,
Muslim
hold on,
woman
hold
if you want. Yeah.
I have a question. I really want to know the answer because you mentioned, well, they made that choice. The question of the day is, why did they make the choice that they did not to? That's the question, right?
Probably. Okay, so I would argue it's probably for the similar reason that police officers and counselors, especially when it comes to child sexual abuse, have failed victims of all races for the last, for basically forever, right? Like, it's not like we are a country that had Jimmy Savile. The prime minister would meet with these people, and people knew there were warnings about him, and they let it go because of reputational fear, because of fear of or just people who are disinterested or in victim blaming. Like we have these problems with like every child sexual abuse issue. We had this with the Catholic Church that lasted for like 40 or 50 or 60 years. The fucking nursery that I went to as a kid was exposed for child sexual abuse like less than 10 years ago, right? So
if you said that there's a cultural problem in the Catholic Church where Catholic priests were sweeping for other Catholic priests and administrators were covering up the child sex abuse of the perpetrators, and that they were just transferring them to other dioceses as long as they signed a letter saying they would never do it again, then pretty much everyone who isn't like a Catholic administrator is going to say, yeah, that was a specific and fucked up version of child sex abuse perpetrated by the Catholic institution that had a unique cultural component that made it worse. And what it feels like, not trying to be rude or mean, but what it feels like is whenever we bring up the nuances of what's going on in this specific case, it's like, well, everybody diddles kids, or, white people diddle kids too, or Europeans and Christians, they fuck kids too. So, this isn't any different than anyone else getting child sex abused, but there are differences and nuances that make this problem worse. I would say that everyone knows that a fucking pimp is a piece of shit who is profiting off of the misery of a human being. I think that it's the same way that a hate crime is worse than a regular crime. It's worse if people are sexually enslaving other human beings because they view them as lesser humans within their religious perspective.
Right. So we were talking about why the police and the council failed. I don't believe the police or the council failed on interacting with Muslim Pakistani women because of the internal Muslim issues. I think that was the police and the council's choice. If you want to talk about Muslim issues, then we can talk about the Muslim issue if you want.
No, you just said something. I'm going to press you on it. So you think that let's say I'm a beat cop in Wales or London or England or whatever, and there is like a conservative Pakistani ethno-religious enclave, and I go to talk to a hijabi or a niqabi, and then I get pulled aside by an imam or a male figure, and they say, hey, listen, I know that you English people, you have your culture where you can talk to anybody, but it is not appropriate for you to talk to women or children without the consent of the male head of household. You're saying that it's the cop's fault for trying to be sensitive to that ethno-religious cultural trope.
I don't believe these people were in the same room when this happened. Like this was.
What are you talking about? I'm just talking about them. I'm talking about the literally cops. Just talking about the failures of law enforcement.
I'm talking about the cops choosing to go and talk to the imam, whilst women's groups separately were reaching out to them and getting ignored. They eventually got meetings, like 5-10 years into the scandal, like as it was already happening. That's what I'm talking about. If you want to talk about,
Okay.
but if you want me to throw you a bone, like I'm just telling you what I read, okay? If you want,
Yeah.
there are instances of the like Muslim cultural issues coming into play. For example, in Derby, one of the issues was when there were Muslim victims of these gangs, young girls. One of the reasons that they were finding it much harder to speak out was because of things like cultural shame, right? Like that's the reason that even if like a Muslim girl is getting raped, she is far less likely to talk about it than a white girl, right? Because of like internal pressures with family and all that. So yeah, that's a very valid criticism. But we were talking about the police and the council. That's why I went there. Right?
Okay, I'll throw you a bone for failure. So it was the most popular one. You would have to tell me the city's name, but I would recognize it. But whatever the one that Oldham, Chesham, who fucking knows, right? But the point is that within that city, they had estimated it was literally like 2,400 potential victims over the course of like a decade or two, and there was a local representative volunteer who was working with the foster kids, and it was in a specific diversionary program trying to keep child prostitutes and drug addicts and gangsters out of the grips of local gangs. And the police gave her a reporting line on which to report like the graphic and grievous sexual offenses that she was encountering while interviewing children. No law enforcement officer ever read the reporting line. They created it as a black hole with which to throw the reports of child sex abuse within this community because nobody actually wanted to deal with it. So if we want to call those cops in particular fucking rabid pieces of shit for knowing that this was going on and failing to address it, I'll grip hands on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's the issue. Like, barring the cases where you've had a few cops and counselors saying that they were worried about ethnic issues, everything else is something that just seems to be shared across all CSA cases.
Well,
Everything else, every other issue just seems to be the lack of care for victims and everything. Yeah.
This is to counter into Dev here, right? Because this is something I've heard a lot. That cops saying, "Well, we're just really we didn't want to like offend, we didn't want to cause some troubles in that way. We were afraid of being accused of racism, etc." Isn't that like just covering up what they did, like making excuses for their multi-mental failures? That's what it sounds like to me, right? Like they're just they know they fucked up and they're saying it was woke did it, right?
No, I agree with you there. The problem though is that sorry, I'm going to the ethnicity page because it actually took me a while to find it. Okay, so I agree with you that there's a failure in law enforcement. But within the structure of the United States, which we have a federal society, I will be happy to be enlightened on the Commonwealth system, is we have cities, counties, states, federal, right? And so as a result of having that system, when the cities fail, the counties will sometimes step in and clean shop. When the counties fail, the state will step in and clean shop. When the state fails, the feds will step in. And so we have this redundant system where we have uncovered horrible negligence and horrible crimes committed by law enforcement officials, but there's always a next step to go to hold people accountable. And what I've seen from news reports is effectively that people have gone to the central government multiple times saying this is out of control at the municipal level. They are not dealing with these criminal organizations. They are not dealing with these grooming gangs. And then the central government is saying it's a municipal issue.
Are you talking about Are you talking about
I'm talking about Jess Phillips.
You're talking about Kenny, who called for an inquiry, right? Just said the council's
enlighten my audience on who this is and what they've done. So
okay,
know, right?
No, so Kemi this was Jess Phillips responding to the Tory lady, Kemi Badenoch, who was saying that there should be a national inquiry, right? And Jess said that this particular one was being handled. Not the council didn't handle it. The council requested it, and independent experts are coming in to investigate them. Yeah, there wasn't. We had an inquiry. We had it 2 years ago in 2022. They gave 20 recommendations. Do you know how many of them were implemented by the Conservative government under Kemi?
0.
Yeah, 0. And only now we're hearing about this current government who are, I guess they're talking about working to implement it. We'll see. But yeah, Kemi doesn't give a fuck about an inquiry at the national level. She's using it for fucking clout, right? She's using it
Yeah,
to troll.
but well, hold on. No, that doesn't mean that you don't give a shit. I don't know this person personally, so I don't know what their characters or virtues are. But at the same time, people actually can be totally pissed off about this. And on top of that, you're kind of admitting that there's a structural issue here because you
Yeah.
have the national inquiry, you have the recommendations that were put to the government, and then apparently there's been no action on it since. So there's this massive gap here where you have cities working for municipalities not wanting to take a reputational hit, so they're willing to sweep these crimes under the rug, and then you have the central government getting recommendations because of all the failures and then failing to implement them. So if anything, you're kind of telling me that these structural issues exist and are worse.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we switched governments like 6 months ago, right? Like, so this inquiry was ignored for 2 years by the Conservative government, and just now, like we've heard from Labour that they're like working.
But
to
you also
like,
understand people are trying to pass the baton back to Keir Starmer because he was like the head of prosecutions from 2008 to 2013 at the central level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if he cared about this issue, then that was kind of at the pinnacle of when this was happening.
Why? Because thank you for the link, Dev. Right, you've linked me the inquiry letter and stuff. I'm reading that this was just rejected. They've rejected any inquiry into this. Why?
What the one that they want to happen right now?
This was from January 2nd, 2025. So
yeah, because we have their inquiries. The inquiry's there. The inquiry's 2 years old now. The 20 recommendations that haven't been implemented by the Conservative government. Like, Labour supports the inquiry from 2 years ago. We don't need more inquiries. We need action. Like, that's what they need.
When you say action,
so
what do you
Wick,
mean?
to implement the recommendations of the inquiry. To strengthen the councils, to give people training, to have better. I can go through the recommendations if you want. I don't suppose you guys have seen any of that going around on Twitter.
No, I mean, like
I do want to go through the recommendations.
If you want to enlighten the audience, go ahead.
Yes, please. Because my audience probably doesn't.
Can we just pause? Can we just pause to appreciate how interesting it is that for all the fucking yap about this shit, that I don't think any of these cunts, Sargon, whatever, could tell you one of these recommendations, let alone 20. Can we acknowledge that? Can we just sit in that for? Okay, thank you.
He's welcome to come on and prove you wrong. By the way, if Sargon,
we did try to get him on. Yeah,
we want to get the own right now. You can jump backstage. I'll pull you in, and you can tell.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So one of the recommendations is like one of the quite bold ones actually is that they want to make it a crime if you are in a specific job that involves working with protected people like children. That it's actually a crime for you not to file a report if you see a risk or indications of child sexual abuse. They want to make that a new law. They want to appoint a new government minister for child sexual abuse. They want to, for past cases, they want to have like a, like a compensation mechanism in place so that people can be compensated for the times when they were let down by the system. They want to, do you know one of the other problems when we talk about gathering data on grooming gangs? One of the reasons that the Home Office found that it's really difficult to get data on that specific crime is because everyone defines it differently. There's no set, it doesn't exist in criminal law, it doesn't exist in the courts, like it doesn't exist in police records. So one of the things as well is to actually have common definitions for each subset of child abuse that can be shared across the country to make collection of data easier, and also to strengthen all these institutions at the more local council level so that kids actually have somewhere to go if there's a problem, and so that workers who notice problems can go somewhere as well. There's like 20 of them in the 2022 inquiry. They're quite clear. There's like a shortened version of it and everything.
Okay, so I have a question which might drag us back a little bit, but I do think it's important.
Go ahead.
So you were saying that there was parity between the ethnic groups and the sexual abuse suffered by these groups, blah, 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 blah.
No, I'm talking about perpetrators, like convictions. So there are 6,000 something convictions every year, and racial groups are proportionally represented.
Okay. I'll look for perpetrators.
Fair enough. I want to hear some of Dev's thoughts on this. I want to kind of get him in here. From what has been said in your research, you sent me and I appreciate this. You sent me a lot of video. You sent me a lot of different reports. You sent me a lot of links to the information on this. Are we missing anything? What are we missing here? Right?
It doesn't seem like you're missing much. The issue is that when it comes to the UK, I tend to hang around in more right-wing circles. I don't know that many left-leaning people in the UK, with the exception of you, Lonerbox. You're like the only one, basically. So
Whoa.
a lot of the news that I get, at least on social media, is from right-leaning figures. And I guess my question is, I'm wondering why this is all blowing up right now, because in the right-leaning sphere of the UK internet, people have been talking about this for like 10 years. Like a lot of this is old news. I wonder why it's going viral right now. Do
Do
you
you
know
really
why,
want my
Lonerbox?
answer to that? Like, you're not going to
Yes.
like my answer, but it's
Oh,
fucking
go
true,
ahead. Go ahead.
okay?
Yeah.
It's
ahead.
because these people don't have a shitload of media access, and they don't give a fuck about child sexual abuse unless it's being done by Muslims. That's it. That's all it is.
Well, okay, but like, why is it going viral now specifically? Like,
There was the inquiry, I think. So every now and then, for these old cases, like so Oldham, I think in Manchester, which is an older case, I think
There
a
we go.
recent report came out about that, right? And then also because Kemi Badenoch called for an inquiry, I guess, and Elon Musk has obviously been talking about it on Twitter and retweeting Tommy Robinson. and
okay,
shit,
yeah.
so, yeah.
It's just whenever Elon talks about something, it just blows up right now. So I guess that's probably why. Yeah, because a lot of this is like is kind of old news. Like I've read a lot of these reports like 2 years ago. It's like, oh, I'm surprised we're talking about it now.
Yeah, because what happens is professionals will write reports and they'll issue recommendations, and then no one knows what those recommendations are, and they just get mad and call for stopping immigration or whatever. Yeah, I think it's also maybe because Keir Starmer made a noise about the Conservatives. He blames them for the increase in immigration. I think our net migration was the highest it's ever been in the last year. It was
Yeah,
like
I want to read that
900,000. So yeah,
I want to read that quote to people because I think it's interesting, right? And I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this. Again, full disclosure, Dev did share this with me, so credit to him. Let me get it up real quick. Blah 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 blah. He says this. He says, in a speech from Downing Street, Sir Keir said, failure on this scale isn't just bad luck. It isn't a global trend or taking your eye off the ball. No, this is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident. Policies were formed deliberately to liberalize immigration. Brexit was used for that purpose, to turn Britain into a one-nation experiment in open borders.
Now, I will say, every single right-leaning figure that I followed immediately jumped on this quote because it's the perfect red meat for them,
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
it's like
accurate is
Angela
this?
Merkel talking about how mass immigration was a failure.
yeah, Starmer's a bit of a troll, isn't he?
Well,
Is
is
he?
he
Is
that trolling?
trolling or
Is
is
that
this
trolling,
accurate?
or-
That's what I'm trying to figure out, right?
I mean, he's
and
obviously
also-
he's obviously trying to use right-wing rhetoric, right? Like he's obviously doing that on purpose to fuck with them or whatever. Yeah, like he's exploiting the fact that like net migration's been insanely high, I guess, since the post-COVID Brexit kind of environment. Yeah, he's just making a weapon out of it. I don't know what he plans to do because it's harder to get EU workers in. A lot of people left after Brexit. I don't know what he plans to do, but we'll see.
Okay, so I've been a little bit distracted because I've been scrolling through your data set. So I wouldn't mind taking a look at it. But I think the clarity that I would be looking for. So there's something, I think it's the FBI UCR. Somebody can correct me on the acronym. But it's effectively like a broad categorization of reporting from a lot of municipalities. And while it's not 100% accurate, you can identify broad trends, right? And they have like crime, they have crime by offender, they have all the subcategories, they have battery, they have assault, they have robbery, they have rape, they have molestation, they have all these different crimes like broken down by different categories of offense.
Just a quick question. Where did
issue-
you post this data? I'm looking for it, Lonerbacks, in the group chat.
I'm
I'm
not-
not seeing
I'll
it.
give it to you. Hang on.
Oh, please, because
So
I want to link
I'm
it.
just
to
saying,
that.
if you're looking for data on specific subsets of child sexual abuse, especially group abuse, you're gonna have a really hard time finding it. You'll find studies that have numbers. Happy to get into it. They'll all say, yeah, this is really limited. Most police centers didn't even get back to us. Data's fucking all incomplete.
Right.
And there's like half the time they
So-
can log in. Yeah.
So if we look at the data set that you provided, then what I'm seeing is that the child sex offense, whatever, correlates with the populations pretty closely, and if anything, the white population is higher. Now, the question that kind of begs is like, is there an underreporting issue? Because you basically have like a 2 or 3% reduction in like conviction within the Black community and the Asian community in the UK, which is like odd because you would think that if it was proportional, it would be proportional, right? But anyways, underreporting aside, like we are talking, there are multiple kinds of offense that are under sex crimes that I think are worth calling out. And the reason why this is so visceral is because it's a specific form of crime. So if a family member sexually abuses another family member, obviously bad, put him under the jail, kill him, whatever, throw him in the wood chipper, et cetera, memes, right? However, if there is a organized ethno-religious group that is sexually enslaving another ethno-religious group because they view them as a lesser form of human being, not only does that offend our sense of propriety around sex, but it also offends our senses of propriety around ethno-religious relations. And not only does it offend our sensibilities around that, but these are people who are not, indigenous to Britain, unless you consider the past 100 years of immigration as them being local. And then as a result, it's like, okay, we bring you into our fucking country. We make you a part of our community. We make you a part of our social tapestry. And the way that you reward us is by sexually enslaving people in our community and viewing them as lesser human beings. That's why it's so repulsive.
Right. I'm trying to think of there's like 3 ways I could ask this question. Is it worse when foreigners do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to deal with that. Like,
why is it?
You're aware that you bring an immigrant group into a country. Like, some of them are going to commit crimes. Some of them are going to commit horrible crimes.
Sure.
Okay,
so let me tell you why, because Wick here asked why.
Yeah.
It's because
please.
It's because oftentimes in Western countries, let's just be real, the West is rich, right? Proportionally rich, right? So it's nice. There's relatively low crime. There's relatively decent social cohesion. There's decent access to education. There's decent access to economic opportunity. So overall, like, Western countries tend to be doing well. And when we look at the people that we allow in as immigrants, refugees, etc., oftentimes they are escaping much more dire circumstances. And there's no moral compulsion for the Western world to take these people in, but they do, because there is an economic benefit, right? There might be a social benefit, there might be an economic benefit, whatever. So these people are coming from dire circumstances, they're moving to a much improved position, and then they are choosing to spit in the eye of the society that is hosting them. So this is like, I invite you into my home. You were homeless 30 seconds ago. And instead of being like, oh yeah, hey, thanks for having me in. Thanks for taking me in from the cold. Let's eat together. Let's make a productive household. I'm happy we're roommates now. You instead choose to spit in my fucking eye. That's what it is.
I mean, we can stop immigration. Or
you could,
but
else? That's probably stupid.
Like,
that's probably what Sargon of Akkad would say.
Yeah. So here's another issue I have. My understanding, maybe I'm wrong, most of these offenders are second generation, right?
Sure.
Okay. Like, they're born here. They're our problem. You know, they grow up in our education system, in our community.
Well, I agree with you. We shouldn't,
job sector,
especially
right? Like,
citizens. We shouldn't deport. If anything, listen, I'm just going to be real here. Okay, I'm not live, and I hope this is in terms of. Well, actually, you know what? I'll just stay away from that.
I am live. Please don't threaten my channel.
Okay,
go ahead.
So no, I would mandate very harsh public sentencing for these crimes, like to the point of like life imprisonment, capital punishment kind of shit. Like that's where I'm at. So the fact that you're like, oh well, locals do it or whatever, or you don't know how to deal with that, the fact that they're second generation. Well, I think you and I have been in this game long enough that we've probably both read the study that said that second generation immigrants oftentimes have like radicalization problems because they have an identity crisis that is worse than the first generation and the third generation. The first generation know what they're coming from, and so as a result, they might even have a preference for their new host society. The third generation is acclimated to their environment, but the second generation has an identity crisis where oftentimes they will cling to a society they never even knew because they feel like they have to in order to have a sense of identity.
If I may, and this is a question mostly to Lonerbox, but I'm curious what you guys would think too. And this is coming from an American who isn't very familiar with British politics, isn't very familiar with the British. I'm admitting that up front, so maybe this is a stupid thing to observe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to me like you guys have a huge problem with assimilation, right? So you're getting the foreigners in, you're getting the immigrants in, second, third generations, they aren't becoming part of your culture anymore. They're just not
How are
assimilating.
they not becoming part of the culture?
Well, it's not.
grooming
Well,
people,
they're making gangs of groomers to.
Well,
go
Wick,
rape
I think,
Wick,
hold on,
Wick, my
Lonerbox,
friend,
let me do this for you. Wick,
Thank you.
we just had
Again, I'm not.
an American citizen, Texas-born Houstonian do a jihadist ISIS-style truck attack in New Orleans. So I think America does integration very well, but I would point to that as let's just call it an integration issue.
I get your meaning, and I would bite the bullet that America also has some issues, perhaps. But again, that's a lone individual is a substantive difference, and I think that what happened here. I don't think they're one for one. Right?
I would point the fingers at some Islamist and jihadist organizations and propaganda. That's where I would point the finger.
I was going to probably argue that driving around in a car with a fucking spoiler and doing that thing that makes it pop every now and then, and enticing girls into your car with fucking alcohol whilst drinking alcohol in yourself and smoking weed and shit. I don't really know if they brought that part from Pakistan, right? That's like a...
Okay, yeah, but did they bring the part where they douse girls in fucking gasoline and threaten to fucking murder them with fire? Because I'm pretty sure I can go find some Pakistani news articles about honor killings and sexual slavery involving intimidation similar to that.
Yeah, but my understanding is most of these crimes were like it was enticing them with like drugs and alcohol, right? Like finding people on the streets, you're in your car, you pick them up and you like offer them fucking gifts and shit. Like I thought, wasn't that the gist of how they reel people in? And like,
well, yeah, that's how they reel people in, but how do they retain them? They were retaining them through threats of violence and homicide.
Okay. And this is like a culturally specific thing? Do like white pedophiles not do this as well?
I have no fucking idea because I can't point to another pedophile organization that kidnapped dozens of foster care children, pimp them out to other people along ethno-religious lines, and then threaten them with homicide.
Yeah, but why
I don't know of one.
Yeah, but why is that the case? We have like thousands of these cases, people convicted every year. We've had like
well, then it should be actually fairly easy for you to identify a white organization that does this.
I've got like a pedophile gang here that raped a bunch of fucking babies and posted it online. Like,
oh no! As a matter of fact, I'll make it more specific. An organization, like I would say the Russian mafia is probably the closest thing that I can come to, but a criminal organization that kidnaps teenagers, plies them with drugs and alcohol, uses the lover boy method in order to recruit people, and then threatens them with homicide if they leave the organization.
Yeah.
I mean, like honestly, like the only thing that I can think of is Slavic Russian criminal organizations. That is the only organization that I can think of that is similar.
We've got pedophile gangs in Glasgow that was pimping people out in a fucking drug den. 7 white dudes. Victims feared attackers could turn them into cats and dogs. Apparently, they pretended to be fucking spellcasters or some shit. Okay.
Wait,
Jesus
what?
Christ. What is this, a commentary community video?
I can send you the thing. Hang on. I'm just saying, like, that's the reason you're not hearing about these particular crimes is that we have groups that do this quite a bit. It's just that you don't get headlines. You're not guaranteed a headline unless you're fucking Muslim. Like,
okay, so Lonerbox, the reason why I'm pushing back on you.
Okay, maybe I can give me until tomorrow. I'll find you a story of like what you just said. What they pimp them out. They pimp them out and they threaten to kill them if they
threaten them with
leave.
homicide. And by the way, I'm sure so for instance,
Loser has to
can give you
$50
examples.
to Wick.
I can give you examples in the United States. I can give you examples in Europe. Okay. So I already know that Slavic and Russian criminal organizations will recruit Ukrainian prostitutes and then, well, not just Ukrainian, but Slavic prostitutes. And they will promise them like lucrative modeling contracts. They'll probably use the lover boy method as well. And then once they get to the country, they effectively sexually enslave them and then threaten them with homicide and steal their passports. So I know these criminal organizations exist. However, these criminal organizations, they do not have the backing of religion or cloaking of religion. They also don't have like an impenetrable community wall that people can't get through. Like these things aren't tolerated in other communities. So when it's said like, hey, there was a ethno-religious sensitivity here that allowed the crimes to get worse without being checked, that's a fucking problem.
Again,
hold on, just
okay,
real quick.
wait, hang on.
Yeah, hold on.
We don't.
Hold on,
Russian
hold on,
traffic
hold on, hold
order.
on, hold on. I want to give Lonerbox a chance to speak, but I have one thing. Like, Lonerbox, you said that they won't get headlines if they're not Muslim. Yeah, but don't their cases get solved? And isn't one of the issues here is that the whole gang rape thing? How long did this happen? 20 years?
Decades.
10 years?
For
Right?
some
Started
groups,
in
it
the
was like
1990s.
12 years. Yeah, 14 years, 15 years. Yeah. But again, this is like the Catholic Church was 40 years before it was uncovered. Like,
That was a
and that's
huge
like
scandal
900
that we
perpetrators.
reported on.
Hold on. No.
Jimmy
This is a
Savile,
point. This is a
fucking-
point. This is a point. Anyone who is not a Catholic administrative apologist is going to say there were specific cultural, structural issues that made the pedophilia and the abuse worse. And I can't really get that from you. And by the way, like, I'm not saying like you have to do this for me to care. Like, I still respect your opinion and shit. However, whenever it comes to like Muslim grooming gangs, it's always like, well, everybody's a pedophile and everybody does sex abuse and everybody does this and everybody does that. That would be like the Catholic Church getting
I'm not a pedophile.
ringed in public, and then Catholics coming out and being like, well, everybody diddles kids, so who cares? Like that's kind of what it would be
these
like.
These Muslims were not
Not
protected
a
by the
kid
local
diddler.
mosque. They were protected by negligence from the white police officers.
You don't think, no, actually, I already know that that's incorrect because there were fucking articles talking about how the cops went to the imams saying, we're having this issue with this local group of gang motherfuckers who are kidnapping and raping local girls. Can you do something about it within your community? And they were like, so no, we know that's not true.
All right, so if you're talking about like the problem with the Catholic Church, again, like I don't see why them doing it for religious reasons makes it like more specifically egregious than like what you described sounded a lot like Andrew Tate, like lover boy methods.
No, it was the
threatening people if they try
organization
to
and the
leave.
cover-up.
Because
doing it
if
as a group,
anybody
like-
outside of the Catholic Church found out about priests abusing kids, then they would hang that person by their fucking testicles and geld them in public. That's what would happen to a Catholic priest if it was well known that they were molesting kids instead of covered up and swept for. What seems to be happening here, though, is that we are sweeping and covering by pretending that everybody is doing this, and not everybody is doing this.
Yeah,
Everybody's
it's still,
doing-
hold on.
wait.
Well, if I may, and I want to get Devin here too, but the substantive difference between when it happens on an individual level, when it happens on a systemic level, which seems to be the case here, is that there are cover-ups. There are people who run soft cover for it by saying, well, it's happening, but it's no real different than anything else. Like one of the reasons that the Catholic thing was so bad was because it was enabled by a religion, an organization that allowed it to occur in perpetuity for decades, and that was horrific. And again, I'm bringing you on because I
The
don't know much
Catholic
about
priests
it.
should have been
I
taking
don't
each
know
other
what-
out
yeah,
behind the
just real quick,
woodshed
though.
and beating the shit out of each other.
Wait, what
One
are
of the
you?
reasons I'm inviting you
sorry,
on
I knew
to-
there
to-
was. I
to-
knew there was something wrong with what you were saying earlier. Was this? Are you talking about the J report where they said the imams were knowingly protecting the perpetrators?
No, it was one of the articles that I read today while I was preparing for this debate, and they basically said that the cops went to the imams saying like, hey, we're having this local issue, and the imams were like,
Is this because
Yeah, it happens.
they knew and chose to lie about it, or where's that? I can't see that. That's not
lying
the J
about it.
report,
They were
is it? Or-
indifferent to it.
Where I can't see that. I'm looking at the J report now for mention of imams. I can see good work was done by officers in developing a protocol on child protection issues in mosques in 2008. Each mosque was appointed a designated person responsible for child protection, and training was provided for imams and others. They were disappointed that it took too long for the council to do it, but the archbishop fucking knew about the abuse in the Catholic Church.
Yes,
Oh,
that was
sure.
horrific
One-to-one.
and bad.
Fuck
It's
them.
terrible,
And
right?
fuck them all to death. And honestly,
Oh,
that fucking,
careful with thoughts,
Hassan
buddy.
Hassan Piker's fucking buddy who was posting that image of what he wanted to do to Zionists. That's what we should do to that archbishop. Okay.
Okay.
So,
and I'm saying that if there were imams protecting fucking like Muslims
I'm
who
not even
drink
saying they were
alcohol and stuff, that you can
protecting.
tell
They
me
were probably indifferent.
okay.
They're probably like, oh,
That's-
they're not a part of my community. I don't give a
Okay,
shit.
Boys will be
that's why I think
boys.
that's why it's disanalogous to the church, because the church protected them, right? The church went out of their way to defend these people.
Okay, but I'm not charging the mosques with sponsoring these grooming gangs.
Okay.
I'm charging the gangs with cloaking their motivations in ethno-religious bigotry.
hold on. Is it not true? Okay. Is it not true? And this might be not true. This might be incorrect. Again, one of the reasons I invited you on Lonerbox, you know a lot more than me. I'm just asking questions, okay? I'm not bad faith asking questions. I really want to know. But
you're not Pepe posting?
Yeah, I'm not Pepe posting. But one of the things that I've read is that a lot of the advocacy groups for Muslims and immigrants would poo-poo on anyone who was talking about this or looking into it. Tommy Robinson, I think maybe it's a good time to talk about him. Wasn't he arrested for talking about this? For bringing this up? For discussing this? Am I wrong?
He was arrested. Yeah, he was arrested for illegally live streaming himself in front of a court, confronting defendants as they went into the building. You're not supposed to film yourself on the doorsteps of a ongoing court case in the UK. They had to
now we're opening up a can of worms.
They had to delay the trial because of that. Can you imagine?
Did they?
Yeah, and almost the people who were defending the groomers tried to use that to appeal the conviction and get it thrown out. They failed. But
why? So why?
Because he was trying to influence the fucking jury. He was a public figure confronting people, giving his opinions on it, and analyzing the responses of the defendants as they spoke to him going in. You're not supposed to do that in the UK. That's against our law.
This is standard. Okay, so I get it. It's not common in the UK, which, by the way, I think your culture is
illegal in the UK. Yeah, it's illegal in the UK.
Okay, so that is. We can talk about legal and moral. I'm going to talk about moral for a second. I don't give two flying fucks if these cases are publicized. And on top of that, if you check out the sentencing for these people, you're talking about some of the worst crimes committed by human beings on other people. Most of them caught like 5 years, 8 years, 10 years.
Yeah, welcome to the UK.
And then only the most and only in the most serious of cases did they catch 20 years. So what you're telling me basically is somebody who's local. And by the way, like Tommy Robinson there's plenty of flaws to criticize. And if you want me to do so in order to show that I'm good faith, I absolutely will. However, you have a local who's pissed off because thousands of girls have been kidnapped and brought into sex trafficking organizations. The government ignored it for decades. And now that they're even going into convictions, the people who are being convicted are getting 5 years or 8 years. And then it's illegal to fucking talk about it while it's happening.
Wait, stop saying it's illegal to talk about it. It wasn't that he was talking about it. It's that he was fucking filming himself, interviewing or trying to talk to fucking defendants as they went into the building to influence the trial, to influence the jury. He's not arrested for talking about it. You can talk about it as much as you want.
Piece of shit while they're walking into the fucking trial. How does that affect the court case at all?
Because first of all, he was going up to them and saying like, "Oh, hi, were you going in for
you're
trial?"
a fucking murdering ass fucking
and then
piece
the
of
guy
shit
would say like,
rapist?
"Oh, yeah," and then the guy would say like, "Fuck your mum, bitch," or whatever, and then he's like, interesting. Some of these comments are sexual. It makes you think, and then it's like, yeah, he was trying to influence the jury's decision, like as a.
Do you not seclude your juries in the Commonwealth?
From looking at media, like social media on their phones and shit. No.
Yeah. Why not? That seems like an infinitely more efficient fucking standard than saying that you can't publicly criticize or harangue rapists.
Wait,
like hold on.
If a trial's going on for
Lonerbox. If you want to say that this is the way that the UK is, and it's just the way that it is, and I have to fucking deal with it, that's fine. I'm not a Brit bonger. It's not my fucking problem. Okay. However, what I'm kind of hearing, and I'm not assigning this to you, but I am hearing from leftoids, okay, on Twitter, proceduralism. They care more about the procedure that Tommy Robinson is violating rather than the thousands of people who were kidnapped and raped for decades in a systemic failure. And on top of that, the fucking sentencing is fucking sane. If I knew that my neighbor was a fucking rapist who kidnapped and fucking trafficked teenagers for decades, and then he caught 5 years for that shit, I can't promise you that it wouldn't be like extrajudicial fucking shit going on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, welcome to the UK. I can show you fucking like all white fucking pedophile rings who rape babies and do it for years, getting fucking 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, 8 years, 20 years. Yeah, it's fucked. Yeah. Whatever.
Why?
Why
is Britain like that?
Your pedophiles get
Answer
5
for
years.
your crimes. Why is Britain giving any pedophile 4 years in prison?
I don't know. If you want to talk about UK sentencing, that's probably for another conversation. But if you want to get back to Tommy Robinson, I'm just saying,
Please.
if you care about the victims, then don't commit a crime in front of the fucking court case. Because not only did that not help anyone, unless you can explain how, it didn't help anyone, him doing that. It actually hurt the victims, because the victims who spend months, maybe years, preparing themselves to give their statements and actually confront their fucking abusers in a courtroom to tell people what happened and answer questions from lawyers. And then they're like, listen, okay, I know this was your big day and everything to speak up, but we're going to have to postpone now because Tommy Robinson, that little thumb-shaped terrorist piece of shit, is starting fights outside the building. Like, fuck off.
So because okay, by the way, your country is infested with drunk white men yelling shit. So the fact that you're saying that a court has to be postponed because there's a drunk white man yelling shit in front of a courthouse is absurd to me.
Like starting conversations with defendants. Yeah.
This tells me
I don't care if you can disagree with the law.
Kingdom deserve to lose its empire. That's what you're telling me right now.
No, I'm telling you that you can disagree with the law. Okay, you can disagree with the law, but if you're going to break what you think is an unjust law, Martin Luther King, you have to have a good reason for it. You have to explain why did Tommy Robinson doing that help anyone? What has Tommy Robinson ever done to help grooming victims?
So this would be the argument. And by the way, I'll go ahead and do my progressive self-flagellation real quick, okay? Tommy Robinson is an alcoholic who got popular off of going into Muslim majority areas and pissing off locals and getting into fistfights with them. That's how he got popular, okay? And so he's used that as a public platform in order to gain prominence. And apparently he's not particularly competent. He's more interested in alcohol and social media than he is in forwarding his cause. Okay. With that addendum stated, the steel man of what Tommy Robinson is saying, or the people like him are saying, is that we have decades of communities coming into our country using an ethno-religious pretext to kidnap and rape thousands of young women. Law enforcement isn't doing fuck all about it. The local city municipalities aren't doing fuck all about it. And they, me, are furious about it. So we're going to go into those fucking communities and rile up shit until people start paying attention. That's the steel man. And by the way, he was talking about Grooming Gangs 10 fucking years ago.
You gotta let Loner. You gotta get Loner respond to that.
Yeah, I know. And thanks to the bravery of the victims and the professionals and all the people who are not Tommy Robinson, yes, people got brought to justice. Yeah, but no thanks to Tommy Robinson.
You didn't have a fucking central government inquiry until 2022.
We had inquiries. We had local inquiries on these things for decades as well.
Why didn't those work? Hold on. Stop. Why didn't those work?
Under the conservative government? Well, yeah, actually things did change a little bit, yeah. Like the police and the institutions now are quite a good bit more equipped to deal with this particular form of this crime than they were like in the 2000s and the 90s. Of course they are. I don't think you have cops these days just nonchalantly dismissing fucking kids as seductresses and child prostitutes. No, we don't really have that as much anymore. We have made progress. No thanks to Tommy Robinson, by the way. Unless you can, I'll ask you again.
Yeah.
How did Tommy Robinson in front of that court building help?
Yeah, I want to give it to Dev for a minute. Go ahead, Dev.
Wick, I'm not sure why you brought up Tommy Robinson. That's a crazy can of worms for this conversation. He is basically just the UK's Alex Jones, frankly.
Okay. But the reason I brought it up is because, well, online, and I know it's online, gang. It's the social medias. I see a lot of people blaming Tommy Robinson, that Tommy Robinson made it impossible to really take seriously these accusations or to investigate. And I think that's a weird thing to claim about Tommy Robinson, whoever he is, simply because like you didn't report on this, you didn't look into this because you didn't like the guy who was telling you about the child rapes. That seems.
I mean, I've heard a few sources say that too. It's ridiculous.
To be clear, Tommy never told anyone about any child rapes, right? Like he just picked up on stories that were brought forward by other people with more courage and integrity than he ever has. Like that's what happened.
So he just jumps on the fucking bandwagon after it's happening. So hold on. So by this logic, I'm going to be a dick. So by this logic, Counterpoints, Vosh, yourself, every lefty creator, you've never really done anything by bringing awareness to leftism, socialism, or communism. You're just assholes who are just pointing to an idea that is greater than yourselves.
Oh no, you can bring awareness. The problem with Tom Robinson is he damages. He doesn't It's not just bringing awareness; he damages. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you know why?
We can talk about this, but
local councils in Rochdale and Rotherham were, even once convictions were taking place and trials were going on and everything else, do you know why these councils were reluctant to let this story get into the press?
Why?
Because they knew that the EDL were going to turn up and riot, and they did. Like, in these really poor communities, they came and fucking...
Hold on, if you have a grooming
and shit,
gang
like-
going around raping a bunch of kids and no one is stopping it, shouldn't you riot?
Shouldn't you have a fucking riot?
Someone was murdered, so probably not. No, I think once that story came out, it was already going. It was getting fucking going through the proceedings. So no, I don't think you should punish.
Oh, the
random
proceedings
fucking
where
people.
the fucking pedophiles get 5 years for
Yeah, I
dousing
don't think
girls
you
in
should.
gasoline.
I don't think you should punish people in a fucking community, most of whom were actually victims of the situation. If in a town that you're not from, no, I don't think the EDL should do that. No.
No, I don't think the EDL should terrorize the local citizenry. I think the EDL should be protesting the fucking government that is giving pedophiles who douse teenagers in gasoline and threaten to set them on fire and threaten to murder their fucking mothers and their sisters in order to rape them to fucking death in order to keep them in a drug and sex trafficking organization. I think that they absolutely should. As a matter of fact, look, I have no fucking idea how any English person doesn't wake up completely fucking incensed. Like, how are you not incensed that pedophiles are catching 5 fucking years for threatening to murder, rape, and kill people?
Hang on. I'm gonna Google something really quick.
Please
okay?
do.
Sure.
But just
I'll hop in real quick.
Please.
Yeah, because it's true that Tommy Robinson, he overblows stories, he lies a whole bunch, he brings on riots, but at the same time, I've definitely seen more left-leaning people in the UK just straight up say, well, since Tommy has talked about this story, we shouldn't talk about it, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Like, so the story can still be true, even if someone bad talks about it, you know?
And I want to clarify something while you look it up on Google. Like, I'm not saying, because I don't know the situation, but if it is true that there is actively a group of people who are holding hostage a group of young girls and the cops are refusing to do anything about it, I think in that case, to rescue the girls who, again, are currently being held hostage, I think it's acceptable morally for someone to go in and try to help.
Well, okay, so we need to clarify a little bit, okay? So to demystify this a little bit. These girls weren't held hostage, at least to my knowledge. They weren't held in like dog kennels or some shit like that. However, they were kept in apartment complexes and fucking shitty houses and all that kind of stuff. But what kept them there was the threat of violence.
That is being held hostage. Yes, that is.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to.
No, that I understand. They were. I
wanted
to
paint a more vivid picture.
Held hostage because if they left, they would be set on fire.
Well, no,
right?
Okay, so just to paint a picture of how bad this was, okay? So it was reported multiple times that a tactic, because obviously the UK doesn't have guns, so you have to come up with creative ways in order to threaten people, and also knives and threatening knives, you know, the public's a little sensitive to that or whatever. Well, guess what kind of you can wash off in the fucking shower, right? Petrol. So the lover boys, after they got done with their honeymoon phase, they would basically say, you can't go back to your family. You can't report this to the cops. You can't report this to the community. And if you do, I'm going to fucking murder you. And instead of threatening them with a knife or a gun, you know, like an American, they fucking doused them in gasoline and said that we will set you on fucking fire. Also, if these girls who were in foster care, so they're already coming from shitty families, they would say, oh, you got a little sister? Oh, you got a mom? If you run away, then I'm going to find your fucking mom or your little sister and I'm going to rape and murder them. And that's how they kept these girls under control.
Terrific. Loner, have you Googled what you need to Google?
Whatever. I was just gonna ask why in the UK 1 in 5 kids are sexually abused. In the US it's 1 in 4. So I don't know, maybe just sticking people in for giving them fucking 400 years in an electric chair isn't always the best way to keep kids safe. But I don't know. Fuck. If you have a problem with the justice system, different question. I don't think 5 years is enough. But if you're going to talk about the EDL getting rampant and rioting and shit like that, usually these riots happen when the story's broken. Like once people have been arrested and or even sentenced, like that's when the rioting happens. It happens afterwards. It's not like that. That's why it's not. There's never been a case where a grooming gang has been fucking exposed by right wing fucking like EDL groups. No, they've never exposed shit. Like they just ride on the fucking bandwagon once something's already.
Okay, I'm not surprised that the right wing is a bunch of fucking soccer hooligan alcoholics who don't pay attention.
But in any
to what
case,
happens
you know what?
in
A lot of what you're saying, though, I agree with. Like recommendations have been given based on this for years and years and years. Some of them have been implemented, usually at more local council levels or by local police. There have been more recommendations made in the last 2 years. The Conservatives didn't do dick about it. I hope this new government does. It would be a real shame if they don't. I agree with all that. But I guess like there's like the broader question I guess people want to ask about like the specialty of immigrants doing it or whatever.
Well, that is kind of important, though, I do think, because you asked a question like I think half an hour ago or something. You said you asked, "Is it worse when foreigners do it?" Or why does the religion make it worse, or things like that. And I do agree with you. I think, Connor, that it is worse. But it's not worse necessarily because they're foreigners, though. It's worse because they're doing it for reasons of hatred, right? I think we all accept that ethnic differences do exacerbate certain crimes. That's why we have, at least in Canada and in the U.S. I don't know about the UK. You have a situation where you can get a heavier sentence for the same crime if done for hateful reasons. And I think we all kind of agree it's probably a good thing, right? So when you see some of the testimonials from some of these cases where they talk about them being, these white kafir sluts or whatever, right? If a white guy raped a Muslim woman and called her a brown slut or a Muslim slut, you would 100% tack on a hate crime charge to that. So why wouldn't it go the other way around? Why wouldn't it make it a more severe crime?
Because when it comes to hate crimes, it's about whether or not hate was the motive. So when it comes to Muslim grooming gangs, again, or sexual abuse.
Why?
Let Loner finish.
Dude, I'm
stop. Connor, stop.
Connor,
stop. If
you're talking about...
Gotta let Loner finish. Loner, go.
I'm not... We can go into why. I'm just explaining what happens, okay? Like,
please.
The way that it happens with Muslim grooming gangs, I think, is that, at least according to the data that I've seen, generally they separate group abusers into two categories. Type 1 is people who exclusively look for children because they're children, and that's usually like pedophile rings. And for the grooming gang associated stuff, is they are generally described as sexual opportunists. They're people who go after girls not because of a specific attraction to youth, but because they are more vulnerable, because they can find them in the streets and entice them with gifts and everything like that. So there's a difference between
not what we were objecting to.
Yeah, and then the second thing is like there's a difference between like if if you're raping someone because they're vulnerable and then you like add on the hate motive, that's like that might not describe your initial motive. You can disagree with that and say that they should deserve extra because they added on like the racial hatred, but that's like we have that with hate crime law as well. Like in a separate case with hate crime, like if someone's like, if a black person starts a fight with you and you like fight them back and call them the N-word, or like you might get like an assault thing, whatever. But if you attack them just because they're black, then that would be the hate crime, right?
Hold on, just real quick. Is it not true, and this could not be true, that they specifically targeted white women? These gangs specifically targeted white women?
So hold on. Let me
girls,
break
not
this
women.
down for the why.
Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, even if you want to call them young women, right? We're talking about like 10 to 18, right? So the reason why they were talking about the vulnerability, the reason why they were targeting these women specifically was because they were in America. I think we would call it the foster care system. Okay. And I asked this when I first heard the story. I was like, if I found out my daughter was running with a fucking grooming gang, I'm pretty sure I would slaughter every single member of the grooming gang.
God
why
damn,
the fuck didn't that happen?
My toss, brother. Okay.
Why is that toss to go after a grooming gang? What the fuck?
You can't talk about how you're going to kill people.
Pedophile grooming gangs?
You can't talk about how
you're going to kill people. Are they a protected class? All right. Anyways.
Are you pro Luigi now, Counterpoints?
Well, in some circumstances, sure. So anyways, the point is that, okay, so we're talking about the vulnerability. That's the reason. That's one of the reasons why they were targeted. But we also know deductively that if they started trafficking Asian girls, because I almost guarantee you it was like a 95-5 ratio was reported of like white Christian girls to Asian girls. The reason why they weren't trafficking as many Asian girls is because obviously that would give them more objections from their community. Whereas if it was girls who were outside of their community, less objections. And the reason why is because they're extra religious. They're outside of the ethnos. They're outside of the ethno-religious shit. And this is reflected in their own fucking quotes.
Yeah,
I
they
think
did
as you conceded earlier, it's also potentially, and this was shown in Derby in one case, that if there are Muslim victims, like Muslim girl victims, they are far less likely to ever get their stories out because of like the cultural shame and shit like that, right?
Sure. So as a matter of fact, if it's 95-5 white Christian girls,
So
maybe it's 80-20 white to Asian because the Asians aren't reporting it.
Christian, it's very weird hearing that as a British person, but yeah, like if we're talking about
cultural Christian,
yeah, like I'm sure there were. My understanding is that there were some cases where it was like specifically targeted because of some feeling of like ethnic superiority or whatever. But I think in most cases it was because they were vulnerable, because they were just less likely to find a fucking Muslim girl who's going to get in a car with you for fucking alcohol.
This is what I'm thinking about. Why even defend
this? Dev haven't talked.
That's not defending. It's just we're just describing.
I'm trying to get Dev the mic. Yeah. Dev, I know you want to.
Oh god, that triggered me so hard.
So, Loner, I assume that in those cases where they explicitly point out an ethnic or religious superiority motive, you would call that a hate crime? Just to clarify? Okay, good. Yeah. Yep, that's all I wanted to ask, yeah.
Oh, are you not going anywhere with that, Dev? You're just going to...
No, I was curious about how you felt about it.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. Go ahead, Connor.
So I would be, if this was my country and this was exposed, I would be furious. And I wouldn't be trying to delineate the nuances of the motives of the perpetrators. I would say, fuck these people, and let's throw the goddamn book at them, and let's figure out how to prevent this from happening ever again. I wouldn't be making these nuances of like, oh, well, everybody does it. I wouldn't be talking about any of that shit. I would basically like, it would be the same shit with the Catholic Church. Yeah, fuck them. There's institutional issues here that allowed abuse to continue long after it should have been reported. And as a result, we need to rip this shit apart and we need to go after the perpetrators. And if the system is broken to the point that we have these men who are committing these heinous crimes and they are out 5 years later, I don't know how that doesn't skeeve you out. Like, I don't know how that doesn't make your skin crawl.
Okay, do you know some people express outrage in different ways? Like, do you think if you're just upset at me for not shouting as loudly as you about the issue, like whatever. The only reason I mentioned the whole like what everybody does or whatever, that's not to dismiss the cases that are done by Muslims. That's because people act as if it is an exclusively Muslim problem when it's not, or even like a largely overrepresented Muslim problem, which it doesn't seem to be according to the data. That's what I'm saying. And because the problem is there are real life consequences. There are real life consequences to that. The problem with like focusing on it and laser focusing on the Muslims who do it results in harm to Muslim communities. That's where the riots, they target Muslims. That's why a guy was fucking murdered. An innocent old fucking gardener was murdered on his doorstep by two guys who called him a groomer.
Okay, so let's imagine that it's 20 years ago, okay? 20 or 30 years ago, and the Catholic priest story is developing. And we are hearing that the archdiocese and the archbishop and the priests have effectively been taking pedophile grooming priests who have molested thousands of children for decades. And instead of being like, wow, fuck those guys, fuck the Catholic Church, we need to investigate this as aggressively as possible. Anybody involved needs to be catching decades, plural, long sentences. And the particularly aggressive people need to face capital punishment. Okay, that would be, to me, a sane response. Imagine if instead I was a diehard Roman Catholic, which I'm not saying you're like diehard Muslim or whatever, but let's say I was a diehard Roman Catholic, and instead, when the story was breaking, I said, well, everybody molests. And if you look at the statistics, the Catholic priests molest as much as teachers. So really, this is kind of like a big situation that's kind of complex. And if anything, it's really the government and the police officers' fault. Wouldn't you kind of think that that came across as sweeping for the perpetrators?
Yeah, and that interaction that you just invented right now, then yeah, that would be a disproportionate, that would be a bad response. But I'm not responding to people who are saying, "Whoa, fuck those guys! They should get longer sentences. We should get like inquiries and respond to recommendations and strengthen institutions and like address issues that stop these issues from coming again." Right? That's not what we're dealing with, right? So the reason I'm responding to the whole, I'm not even saying everybody does this in that dismissive way. I'm just saying that That's because in the UK, we have had over a decade of people saying that like 90 or 80% of fucking sexual abuse is done by Muslims in the UK, which is false. That's why I'm dealing with that. That's why, and it's just as well I brought it up, because I know for a fact you two were surprised by that data that I gave you from police data, from all the police data, from all the convictions. You guys were surprised to find out that ethnic groups in the UK, white, Asian, black, were about proportionally represented.
I don't know
Am I
if I
wrong?
was surprised. I would say that the data
Okay.
set that I was looking for didn't have the information I was looking for.
Well,
So
I hadn't heard it before. That's true.
I
yes.
think you were slightly surprised. I think probably before coming into this,
What?
did you have an impression that Muslims did this like
No,
massively disproportionately?
well, okay. So the thing that I would say to address
Well,
that,
I'll
I
just
guess,
say it directly. Yeah. I thought Muslims were going to be like equivalent to a 1350 situation. You know.
okay. And I would say I will be surprised if you find me contradictory information to organized sex abuse, prostitution, trafficking rings that are equivalent. Okay.
Like Jimmy
I'll
Savile and
be
his guys?
surprised.
Like Jimmy Savile and his dudes?
Did Jimmy Savo have a fucking organized pedophilia crime ring that was covered up by the
Yes.
government?
Yes, Thatcher fucking was warned about him and she didn't do anything. Like,
No, hold on.
he had a fucking
So
TV
you're
show
saying-
and he got kids
No,
onto
no,
the
no,
show
no.
and enticed them with rewards and shit.
So there were like 4 or 5 pedophiles that were in this gang that were all fucking raping kids together.
This guy had access to hospitals. He had a fucking little caravan out in the countryside where him and his mates would take fucking girls and abuse them. He had access to care homes where he would just get into a room with a fucking vulnerable child and ram his fucking cigar-infested fucking tongue down their throat and shit. Yeah, he'd get people onto his show and then rape them in the car.
So not great. Okay,
We didn't find out till he
Not
died.
great.
Why
are you not fucking incensed? Well, not great, you know. That's
Yes.
bad. Why are you not fucking incensed?
No, that's
Why are you not
exactly
calling
where I
for
was
his
gonna
head on a
go.
spike? What?
That's exactly where I was going to go. You have a government, the highest echelons of government, who swept for a fucking pedophile for decades and gave him access to hundreds, if not thousands of children. You're not fucking furious at your own goddamn government. You now have effectively ethno-religious sex recruiting gangs that are being released back into your communities 5 years later. And you're not fucking furious? Like, I understand you have autism, but like, fuck. Like, get pissed off. What the fuck?
I'm going to take this moment to read some of these super chats. People have paid me money. I appreciate the donations and things like that. We'll get through it and then we'll continue the discussion. But we'll
That's a systemic failure.
take some time, gang.
my
$2.
Dude, that means that the UK government is equivalent, in my opinion, to the Catholic Church at this point.
Okay, we're gonna read
You know?
these
Okay,
super chats.
we've switched government. Okay, just to be clear, right? Like, I know that this happened under New Labour, this happened under the Conservatives. Neither of them did fucking dick. This government has at very least acknowledged the recommendations that they even fucking exist, and that they've signaled that they want to implement them. Hopefully, they do. Who knows?
Okay,
You know,
$2.
I cannot believe that Sargon skipped out on this. He's streaming video games on his gaming channel rather than being
pussy.
here for this
He
gold.
could absolutely come in
Fucking
and
pussy.
break this whole thing open. $2 from Fates. Getting Cybertruck BMB before trucker video. Tier 2 membership by Honkler. For once, we have a panel that isn't immediately devolving to debate bro tactics. This was said in the beginning of the show. For once, we have a panel that isn't immediately devolving to debate bro tactics, and I'm here for it. I would love to see more like this going forward. $10. Thank you from Honkler for the same thing. Zephyr Hash, Derby is a place in England, spelt Derby. Thank you. Fancy Teeth for $5. Connor, if all the Muslims that immigrated to Britain were atheist, would that eliminate grooming gangs in that community / ethnic demographic?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
So if you came up with like some kind of there's examples of like communist sex abuse and institutions that were formed very poorly in like Eastern Europe. So no, of course it doesn't eliminate pedophilia. But what we've talked about, what SFO and I have talked about, is that there is an ethno-religious bigotry that is a component of the sex trafficking. They view the girls, specifically the white cultural Christian foster girls, as exploitable because they're not members of their community. They are a lower social, religious, ethnic caste. Therefore, they do not deserve the human considerations that you would extend to a member of the religious in-group.
Okay. A 5-month membership from Mantis. Thanks for the gifted membership and content, Wick. You're welcome. $2 from Silver Camaro. Dev loves nothing more than pooping in his diaper. Okay. $10 from Aaron Gray.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. An ideology can be incompatible with a local culture, and a non-citizen immigrant committing violence has taken the privilege of being allowed into a better opportunity for granted, assimilate, or leave. $5 from Niz. I had to refresh the page when Wick said he wasn't a PDF, too based for YouTube. $5 for Fancy Teeth. I'm glad I get to witness Wick's Anna Kasparian's heel turn moment, LMAO. It's always the sexual transgressions that break them. I'll pay for that, LOL. I don't know where my heel turn is, but whatever. $5 from Beerwater. The government swept for the grooming gangs like Connor swept for Vosh. $5 from Fancy Teeth. Loner, you have to stop listening to their words and listen to their emotions. They don't want the systems to improve. They want to feel better. $2 from Testicle Johnson, free Top G, and $2 from Admiral Gibbs. Can fraud points define not great? Okay, thank you for the super chats. Let's get back to it. I understand that the system has failed before. The system will fail again. But let's talk about immigration specifically. Does this incident warrant any change in the immigration policies that Britain has? And if so, what should those changes look like? Go ahead, Loner.
I don't know what the fuck they're doing that's resulted in like net migration tripling compared to what it was pre-Brexit or pre-COVID. That's probably something that we're not going to handle very well, because it's like I don't really know if that's what the workforce even needs. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that's happened, but it probably should be addressed, and hopefully it does, because immigration's supposed to make sense.
Starmer said it was by design, right? He told you why. He's like they want.
I mean, he said by desigin, but he's a fucking whatever. I don't like.
I don't know Starmer. Is he like a Trump or something? What is he?
No, Starmer's Labor, right? He's like the most insanely milquetoast, like center left liberal, like not very, like probably to the right of Biden. Yeah, he's just boring fuck human rights lawyer, like
okay.
Who is very
the right
like,
wingers.
His one talent is his one talent is politicking. Like that's what he like saying. Open borders to the conservatives is just like funny, right?
Yeah, because what I've seen is all the right wingers, not just in the UK, but pretty much everywhere, have latched onto it as basically him confirming that Klaus Schwab actually controls everything, and there's this massive open borders experiment being run in every single Western country. And it's like, okay, so like probably not true, but the fact that he's now said it has just kind of blown the brains of every single right winger I follow online.
Like, yeah, I think it's. I have a feeling it's because of Brexit. Obviously, a lot of people left, and we can't get EU migrants in anymore. But also because of COVID. But like, I don't know. I don't know why it's gone. Because again, like, immigration is usually like dictated based on some kind of need from some part of the country. Like, I don't know. It's just not. It's like a random system. So I don't know.
From what I understand, it is here's how the right wing views the government with regards to immigration. Whether or not it's accurate, it's probably less accurate, in fact. But they basically view the government as wanting immigration a priori for moral reasons rather than economic ones, which is just stupid.
Yeah, so if I was looking at the United States, our legal immigration system is supposed to be around roughly like 1 million people a year, which is 1/3% of our, what is it? So yeah, it's like 1/3% every year. So every 3 years, you're adding 1% population. I actually think that's relatively reasonable, and you could probably get a decent amount of like talented, ambitious, cool, interesting people in through that. But that means that you actually have to have like a secure border, and you also have to vet the people that are coming in. So yeah, the UK is a fucking island. If you guys can't control immigration, then no one can.
Well, it's not out of control. If someone's migrating legally as part of that 900,000, it's because that's the government willed. That's why it happens.
Well, sure, but didn't you say that it like tripled?
Then, yeah.
So are you saying that the government permitted the immigration to increase by 300%?
Yeah, they will have. Yeah, like it's not going to happen
why?
if you don't approve numbers. I don't know.
Didn't you guys already have a housing shortage? What the fuck are you doing?
We lost a shitload. Yeah, we lost a shitload of people because of Brexit, I think. And also COVID was an issue. Apparently, according to the ONS, the numbers are expected to fall back to 300,000 net migration. in the next 1 or 2 years. So I don't know.
So
But
temporary.
the problem is, again, is like everyone, like, it's all the aesthetics, right? People just get obsessed over fucking dumb shit, like people arriving on small boats, as if that's like the crux of the issue. Even though, like, the numbers of people on small boats who get sent back are quite high. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but okay. So again, if we're talking about like symbolic, why do people care about this? The reason why you care about it is because you haven't vetted those individuals. That's why they care about it.
No, but they get vetted. If you're going to arrive on a small boat, you're going to get picked up and vetted. It's not like you just wander in and start vibing.
Okay, so just as an example, because now we're talking about proceduralism and might as well anyways. So for instance, in the United States, right, when we're under current policy, people set foot in the United States and then they get a court date, right? And then pending the court date, the humane solution was to release them into the country pending their court date, right? So you have people who are having their documents reviewed, but they have not been reviewed yet. They are also coming from states that are, let's just say, not the greatest when it comes to, like, I don't know, physical security and economic security. And so you basically have somebody that you have no idea who the fuck they are wandering in your country for 1 year to 2 years pending a court date that they may or may not show up to. That's why, like, I think that we need to fix the southern border in a variety of ways that are not popular with conservatives. But that's why people are pissed, is because you're basically saying, oh yeah, walk around here for 2 fucking years until we figure out who you are. And then we'll tell you whether or not you can stay.
Yeah, how does it work in Britain? How many people that arrive in these boats or whatever, how many get sent back?
It depends on how you count it. Oh fuck, I wish I could have the data. It's probably
I'm
not going to find it immediately. So it depends, because I think what we have is like a preliminary meeting where there's like a sort of quick vetting that happens with regards to whether or not, like, they're a terrorist or some shit, like something obvious. And I think those numbers are, there's like 3 different categories for people getting sent back. I think one is assisted, one is like voluntary, the others are involuntary. I think for like assisted and voluntary, they're fairly high numbers. And for the other ones, they are the ones who get put in like either the disused hotels or the fucking dorms, and then they just live on like a really stupidly low amount of money, like maybe like £10 a week or something for food and clothing. Bit more than that probably, but yeah. £7 a day, yeah. Then the other ones. But as far as I know, with asylum seekers, we don't have the same issue they have in the United States. We don't have like massive asylum seeker populations that just kind of linger here for decades or whatever. I don't think that's the case.
I guess to maybe ask it a little more pointedly, do you think that there should be extra rigor provided to immigrants from the countries that have engaged in these grooming gang practices? Do we think that maybe we should like look into stemming or making it harder or putting more barriers in the way for people from like Pakistan to get in and things like that?
I mean, it seems like in terms of individuals, it seems like we vet them okay, because first generation migrants don't seem to do it that much, right? Like, it's the second generation. So I don't know if you talk about saying like, if there's a particular country or that has a higher crime rate, then you just have to like lower numbers for that particular country. Maybe.
Again, I'm just asking for ideas here. Cultural integration. Why is Britain failing at that? And again, I'm not saying that America is doing it great. Why is Britain failing, and how can we make it not fail anymore? How can we fix that? How can we make it so that they are more willing to integrate into the British culture? What does it mean to be British anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Don't know.
To
you guys?
What does it mean to be?
No, but isn't that a fucking problem? Don't you think?
I don't know. We're like kind of like America. We're Western liberal, like fairly individualistic. Like, obviously we like freedom and democracy and freedom of speech, and apparently short jail sentences.
Apparently,
I don't know.
Love fucking short jail sentences for pedos. That's a
politeness, etc. Like, I don't know, shit. Bad teeth. Like,
no, hold on.
I don't know. Like,
no. This is a problem, and this is why Sargon has attracted so many fucking people to his retarded fucking worldview. Okay,
so also why I should be here to actually defend this.
Yeah. So when it comes to the United States, I can point to things in the United States. Like, I can point to the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the wars in the 19th century, some of which were not morally justifiable, some of them which were like the Civil War, right? I can point to the Civil Rights Act. I can point to like we have this flawed founding along an Enlightenment ideological basis, but it seems like we're always trying to realize our ideals more and more as time goes on. And we have these sputters and these spurts, right? Historical sputters and spurts. So I can point to that as like a almost unique culture on the planet that kind of, if you prescribe to that set of ideals, then you're an American. I don't care what country your grandparents hail from. If you believe in that set of ideals, you're American. So what the fuck makes a Brit a Brit? Because
Okay, so
otherwise,
the
Sargon's
Enlightenment.
going to say we're ethnic tribes.
Okay, so the Enlightenment came from France and Scotland, right? So Scotland was like, we have like Adam Smith and all that shit. That's our shit. Okay, yeah. So okay, yeah,
Okay.
we have the Enlightenment. We have World War II. You know, we were the ones standing alone for like fucking 2 years, waiting for your isolationist Nazi fucking cucks to come and join in. But when you were attacked by the Japanese,
Right?
yeah, we've got like the mother of democracies. We've got our parliament. We've got constitutional monarchy. We got queen. That's why we're never going to have a fucking right-wing government try to riot and trash the fucking.
Do second generation Pakistani immigrants identify with any of those social creations?
I imagine some of them do. I don't think I can't tell you if most of them do. I imagine a lot, probably more than average don't.
So what I'll tell you is, in the United States, regardless of whether or not you think this is weird or not, like literally in elementary school, you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, every day when you wake up. Like you do that before school starts. When you talk about like American civic education, it's oftentimes Eurocentric, but also America-centric, where we talk about like our civics, our constitution, the way we were founded, et cetera, et cetera. So these are things that we actually like do, and I think should even do more in our public education system to make sure that people have like an American identity. So do you have an equivalent? Because there's literally Pakistani men who are saying, we're not a part of Britain or England. We are separate. We are Muslim. We only give,
to be clear,
deference to God.
Just to be clear, I'm humoring you when I say that I don't know how many of them are like, I know Indians, for example, fucking love the Queen or the King, whatever. Like they like the monarchy and shit. As far as British Muslims, when I look at surveys and stuff like that, like I don't really know. They tend to have like fairly like British behavior, like most people do, I guess. But it doesn't seem to be, at least according to crime data, that like they might commit a bit more crime, but they don't seem to be like as disrespectful to the age of consent compared to white people on the whole when it comes to CSA stats. I don't know. Like,
do you have any kind of public education that actually reinforces what it is to be British?
In a way, like we learned World War II quite a lot. We learned about the contributions of like India and Pakistan and all the empire and fucking Windrush. Yeah, we learned about that stuff. Yeah, that's why they
does that solidify into any kind of coherent identity?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Hang on, I can look at the data for you if you want, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of these second generation, like they still identify as British, right? Like British Pakistani or British Asian or British.
Do you have a
Indian.
British Pledge of Allegiance?
No, we don't have a Pledge of Allegiance.
Do you have a banger fucking
God Save
song?
the Queen song, right? Like God Save the Queen.
That's
we have a song.
God Save the Queen. It's God Save the Queen, James Bond in World War II. That's Britain.
What's America? Bro, half of your fucking country doesn't even believe in elections.
Yeah, that's because they're retarded. But guess what? Guess who immigrated to America?
Lots of people, Europeans, right?
The refuse of Europe.
Yeah.
The poor, the huddled masses. Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying, okay.
I'm
just saying we have issues with Islamic extremism. We've had like a few terror attacks. I don't think we've had any like Muslim terror attacks like too recently. I think there was a politician who got attacked a couple of years ago. We've had the grooming gangs, even though they make up a tiny minority of British Muslims, like negligible.
How is
I'm just saying, like,
go on.
You know, when our fucking conservatives lose elections, they concede and they walk away, right? And they let new people come in. Like, it seems like you're like the lack of loyalty and
I don't want to get into America.
It's far more of an issue in the United States right now than it is in the UK.
We can do that. We can do that a different night. But you know what? You know what's funny is the way and we can move right back into the topic. But the way that the right wing got Americans to betray the institutions of the United States was by appealing to the symbols of the United States, which I find deeply ironic.
It's disturbing, and we could spill a lot of ink about that.
Yeah, it's almost as if getting a bunch of fucking kids to dronishly do the Pledge of Allegiance didn't really help you that much, did it? Like,
it helped us in some ways. But I will say this, right? Back to the topic at hand, right? Like, there is a fear from a lot of British people, and frankly, I'm scared for you guys that this isn't this isn't really going to get resolved, right? You brought up the 20 points or the 20 things that the report said that they need to change and things like that, but it doesn't seem like any of it's getting done. So what needs to happen, right? We make you king for a day, Lonerbox.
It seems like this
What are you
government
doing?
is actually, at least if according to their spokesperson it's true, it seems like this government has already started work on implementing these recommendations. I don't know how long it'll take. Usually implementing this kind of stuff takes like at least a couple of years. It's more than we've seen from the last government, so that's a good hope, right?
Maybe. I don't know.
And councils have already done. I know councils have already been doing work on this for the last decade as well. I know it doesn't get into the press because it's not as exciting, but like they've made advances right now. It's going to be much easier to collect data on particular subsets of these crimes as well in the future because councils have actually started to consolidate and have a kind of like a shared understanding of what each term means and how to categorize in the same way so that we're not having 40 different police stations with completely different understandings of what each word means. Yeah.
We're going to have so much better data on these grooming and rape gangs, and we're going to get them all 3 to 5 year sentences.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
So-
your kids are more likely to be abused than our ones, Bob.
Dev,
Fuck.
well, we're more likely to prosecute on that, yes. But anyway, go ahead, Dev.
I decided to go look up just because, I mean, Sargon really should have been here because he's the true right winger in this conversation, and he didn't want to be here. But I did at least gather up his arguments. These aren't my arguments, but I just wanted to see what he had to say on this topic. I mean, he just wants them all deported, right? He just wants to basically take.
But if they're citizens, how do you deport?
I assume just send them back to the country of that their parents came from, or something like. Or if they have dual citizenship, just strip them of the British one and then send them out. You know, that's kind of his view of it. And
You do it by being a disloyal fuck. That's what you do.
the example that he cites, is that when you had the British pulling out of India, there were white people who were born in India, but everyone understood that, well, they're not actually Indian just because they were born there, right? They had two white parents that had come from the UK, and they had to go with their parents. It was that sort of thing, right? And his argument is, why can't we simply just do that? They can go back with their families because they all have to go. That's kind of his position on it.
So what's the line? All Pakistanis?
Pretty close
he
to it,
wants
I
to
think.
deport all the Browns, yes.
I wish he was fucking here because that's like the most retarded shit I've ever heard in my life. Is he angling for complete political irrelevance? Is that what he's going for?
I don't think all, but a lot of, for sure.
No, but
Definitely
what's
a vast
the
majority.
line? What's the principle? And I know I'm asking you because he's not here, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like so for instance, when it comes to Nick Fuentes, for instance, at least his publicly stated position, he says like race isn't everything, but it's not nothing. And so when he says that, my understanding is that he's not actually seeking to deport the United States citizens because that's not like a pragmatic political position, but he does want Christian nationalists to be in charge of the government, and he doesn't care about republicanism. That's how I understand his perspective, right? Whereas what you're kind of telling me is that Sargon actually thinks that it's a legitimate policy proposal to deport all Pakistanis?
Not all, but most, and it's because most of them aren't actually loyal to the UK, so they have to go.
Okay. I would love to hear his policy prescription because I almost guarantee you this is like one of the least popular political solutions to Pakistani grooming gangs ever proposed.
I mean, yeah, probably, but the
what
more
would his
sophisticated
answer
version
be? Just real quick.
Okay.
What would Sargon's answer? And I wish I could have asked him myself. When I asked, "What does it mean to be British?" What would Sargon say?
Yeah, so he would say that Great Britain is a union of, I think, used to be four kingdoms, now 3 because Ireland left. But Northern Ireland is still around though, but it's not quite a kingdom. But you have three indigenous ethnic groups: the English, the Scottish, and the Welsh. And that's what it means to be British, is to be a member of one of those 3 ethnic groups. And otherwise, you're a foreigner.
Even the English are fucking mutts. They're fucking Anglo-Saxons and Celts, and they're fucking like Normans and Danes.
Don't forget
Fuck
Norse,
out of here.
Vikings.
Yeah. So literally,
Celts and Picts and Gales. Yeah, it's like
and by the way,
aren't ethnicities. Those are boundaries. Those are nation lines. Like it's not.
Yeah. So by the way, if he wants to. Yeah, if he wants to have his like gay little distinction, like, oh, well, it's only the past 1,000 years of history that counts. Like, okay, that's fine, but I would like to hear articulated why. Right?
And it's really
Well,
hard to get.
it's probably because if I had to guess, and I think I'm pretty accurate on this one, it's because the English have gone through several rounds of ethnogenesis when it comes to these other waves of immigration and conquerings and whatever that happened, 1,000 years ago or something, and that is
Sure.
not the case with what's happening today. The
Okay.
people who are coming in don't view themselves as English, as part of that tribe.
Okay, so I understand this, but then I feel like a
I
decade
don't
ago.
want to get too bogged down in this specifically, right? Because he's not.
Well,
here,
no, but
so
I mean,
there's
this
not
is
much
relevant to the conversation because we're talking about like what does it mean to be British, right? So,
I'll tell you, whenever it's someone like Sargon, okay, it's just this nebulous, hyper emotional. They probably sit there thinking about good old merry England when it was like the Shire and a bunch of little fucking hobbits are running around planting fucking, doing their little gardening and shit. It's nothing. It's like, it's bullshit. It's just
okay. So yeah, so
that does sound kind of like some of the things he said. Yes.
yeah.
Well, okay, so then okay,
He's
so
the fucking
we're talking
retard
about,
who wants to go to a Lord of the Rings LARP fest and like doesn't do it.
Okay,
So go to New
And
Zealand.
to just
Look,
on the
look.
internet. Like,
I'm
yeah.
allowing this because he called us all rape denialists for whatever reason. So
well, I want to ask Lonerbox.
I don't know who we called
If
that.
you-
I don't know.
If you polled, so for instance, I get it. Sargon's popular on the internet. He built his platform. He has a few thousand live viewers, et cetera, and then a few 100,000 subs, and his videos do get views. Okay, if we were to poll the Commonwealth population, how many people do you think would actually support these policy prescriptions?
For mass deportation.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure most Brits want immigration reduced by a bit. I think that's it. I don't think anyone wants mass deportation.
So
yeah, that's like less than like 5%. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, if I'm hearing you correct, this is the way that I would summarize that. He's internet relevant, but he's basically politically irrelevant because his ideas are so far from what most mainstream Brits want.
Yeah, I think he thinks, I don't even know what his positions on Reform UK are, but even Reform UK says that the healthcare system needs immigration. I think he really disagrees with that. I haven't spoken to him, but I spoke to his little fucking Frodo Baggins. Who's the guy? Callum.
Callum?
Yeah.
I spoke to him. He thinks Reform UK are too, like, they pander to progressives too much. So yeah, that's like, and Reform got what, like 14-15% of the vote. So yeah, he's
Wait,
yeah,
so
they're very far right in the UK. Yeah, they don't represent. This country
I was going to ask if they were the right wing party in the UK.
Yeah, well, when Sargon ran with UKIP, didn't he get like? Yeah, that's when they died. yeah. These guys don't represent the country at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I have also heard that they think Nigel Farage is not going far enough. He has to go further to the right. He's pandering to the center too much, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of, so I do know, understanding, like I've read some of the books that he's read, so I can at least present the argument. The view here is that America, and to a lesser extent Canada, these are propositional countries, right? Because they have constitutions, and the Constitution is the social contract. It's rationalistically planned out beforehand, while Britain is a traditional country. It's inherited, not planned, and so you cannot treat the UK the same way that you would treat a place like America or Canada. So you can't just one for one swap in the same policies, especially when it comes to immigration, with regards to whatever indigenous ethnicities exist in places like the UK, because those indigenous ethnicities don't really exist in the UK and Canada, or in the US and Canada anymore. They're mostly gone.
Is there any like truth? Because the thing that I've seen from British nationalists and American nationalists, to be clear, is the worry about cultural replacement, right? We had the whole H-1B visa debate, debacle between Elon and the MAGA people and stuff like that. And the argument was that they're coming in, they're replacing our culture. I hear those same arguments from British nationalism, right? Like that they are importing people to replace the British culture, whatever that happens to be. Is there any truth to that, or is that an actual thing that British people should at least be aware of or be worried about?
Yeah, I think it's something to be maybe thought about. So for instance, I use this as a hyperbolic example. I would not want a total laissez-faire system in which there's 1.2 billion people in China, right? I would not want 300 million Chinese people to come here overnight and then be granted citizenship automatically, because then basically they can vote in whatever system they came from, right? So there is an effort towards integration, and I think the United States as a propositional country is worth preserving. But if Sargon is going to have this position that they are a organic nation, then you need to be able to articulate what the tenets of that organic formation are, and it can't just be being like pale from these islands. Like, that's insufficient. You guys were killing the fuck out of each other 500 years ago. Like the identity of like a Celt versus an Anglo, you know, that would have been life or death even 200 years ago.
Probably all
I think
true, yeah.
UK is about 80% white. In the last census, 90% of people identified with as some kind of British, not exclusively, but like British something, or like
So
Scottish, Irish, Welsh.
So
The thing is, even in the UK, like if you get like America, like I don't know, maybe other people have seen this. I don't think I ever have. I've seen loads of Indians identify as British. I've seen loads of Pakistanis identify as British. I've never seen like an American migrant to the UK identify as British, or like a German or an Italian or a French. Like, we do have our, like, the thing is with Britain is like, when it comes to multiculturalism, we've had a lot of issues with it, like every country has. But compared to the rest of Europe, like, we've done so much better than they have. Compare London to like fucking Paris, right? In London, yeah, you can go between like Hounslow and then the town center and then parts of like the East End, and you can actually enjoy a lot of the fruits of multiculturalism. And even though there are issues, like, you can still do that. And there's a lot of intertwining and everything. If you go to Paris, it's like fucking, you've got this one circle on the inside, which is all protected and it's got the policing and everything. And then the outside is just the fucking Wild West. So, and compared to all the, like, we're probably one of the only major countries in Europe left now that has actually avoided having some crazy far-right party getting 25% of the vote, you know? They've all had that for years now. So we've done something right. And I think part of it is that, you know, a lot of people who come here are people who came from the empire, and whether they came from like the West Indies or from India or Pakistan, like, yeah,
colonialism.
Again, some of them commit a lot of crimes, but some of them also identified mostly as British, right?
Well, yeah. So,
and after your response,
that would be the concern, though.
I do want to get. I'll let you respond to that, Connor.
I
want to respect everyone's time, so we're gonna get to closings. We got someone who wants to come in and ask you a few questions, Loner. So if you don't mind staying for a little bit, is that okay?
Loner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry,
yeah. Okay.
Somebody wants to come in and talk to you. So all I was going to say is, if let's just stereotype, and let's say all 80% of the quote unquote indigenous people from the British Isles, let's say that they all identify as British, which I'm sure there's probably like some Republicans who hate the monarchy or some shit, or, you know, there's probably those folks. If 50% of my immigrant population within a generation or two did not identify with the host country, then there's an identity issue there that needs to be resolved.
Wait, so if 80% of, are you saying that there's too many people from the outside of the white population that doesn't identify as British? I'd have to look down. I'd have to look specifically at that.
Let's just stereotype it. Let's say that all 80% of the whites identify as British, and let's say between the 20%, half of them identify as not British. Then I would view that as a problem that needs to be solved.
Would that depend on where they're from? Because if they're European, then they're not going to identify as British anyway, right? But that's probably not. Is that
yeah? If they're French and they speak French in their house, I don't give a fuck about whether or not they identify as British, even if they stay there for generations.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably in the census. You can find out how many British Asians or whatever identify as like just not British, even though they've lived here for quite a while. It'd be interesting to see if anyone from Windrush like doesn't identify as British. That would be wacky. I don't know.
I don't know where Windrush is. Anyway, gang. We've talked about a lot today. I don't know if we've solved the problem. I do understand it a little bit more, and I will say this: like, through all the yelly, screamy stuff, I do kind of have at least a little better sense of what happened, why it happened, how it got so covered up so much, etc. So I appreciate y'all coming on here. Gang, I have links to all their stuff in my description if you want to check it out. We do have a caller who wants to come in after the closings, but I want to give each of these guys a closing thought before we wrap up. And let's give it to Dev first. Let's Loner have the last word. Dev, closing thoughts on this, please.
I'm just happy to be here. That's pretty much it, because
Cool.
like I have a whole bunch of data on this, but I have no actual story to put the data to, right? I don't exactly know how people in the UK feel about it, because like I said at the start, the majority of my of my narrative sources are right-wing narrative sources because of the friends and former friends that I've had in the political space online. So it was good to at the very least just hear a different view of it, Lonerbox. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you. Gang, Dev's always a pleasure. He helped with this by giving me a lot of information, a lot of data, which kind of helped my like baseline understanding. So I appreciate you. Counterpoints.
Yeah, hi. I run a YouTube channel called Counterpoints 40K. We are currently at like 96.3 subs. So we're really in the home stretch of 100K. So if you're into science fiction violence or Warhammer 40,000, then go ahead and check out the channel. We have lots of cool breakdowns, lots of lore, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to the topic, obviously, I am a fan of Lonerbox. I think he's a good dude overall, even though we do disagree with shit. And I love Wick and SFO as well. I do wish that Sargon would come out of his fortress arc, fucking pussy, and actually discuss what he actually believes. That would be fantastic. And when it comes to this issue, I think that we have to have a realistic expectation when it comes to immigration, but that doesn't mean that we're soft on violations of the host country. And I do think that there is something that is actually worse when you escape a terrible situation or a country, or you take advantage of an economic opportunity, and then when you go to someone else's country, you fuck over the host nation. I think that is a more grievous crime than just committing the crime in the first place, and I think that's why people are pissed off.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Lonerbox.
I love Britain, love you guys, love Scotland, especially. Hate groomers, hate pedophiles,
Simple
hate
as.
religion generally, hate racists. If you're so upset about losing your fucking fantasy of merry old England, go to a fucking Renaissance festival and stop trying to deport people who love this country more than you do. Cuck. All right, sorry.
Stunning, brave. Really appreciate you. Let's see. Butters is recommended, okay, to me, and so he's been vetted. And he has a few questions for you, Lonerbox. So let's bring him on and see what he has to say. Let me read the super chat real quick, because money. Lachlan, is Connor saying Muslims only rape kids and gangs and all the white pedophilia crimes are familial? This is the implication when he says that he wants the data on specific grooming gangs versus overall.
Yep, that's what I said.
Okay.
Whites only molest their kids, and Asians only molest other people's kids. Definitely.
Oh fuck. Sorry, I was not expecting. There's a stream delay, so I was not expecting to be dragged in right as I was dragged in there.
You're fine. You're fine.
Hey, Butters.
You have some questions for Lonerbox here. Go ahead.
First of all, I'd just like to say, Dev, fuck you for saying that I'm like equivalent to Sargon.
Wait, what do you mean?
I mean, I'm not a Sargon fan.
Oh Jesus! Listen, I just recall that that time you met him in real life and then told me into his camera to make better videos.
Yeah,
So.
speaking of which, Dev, make
the audio.
Thankfully, your insult cut out this time.
Oh, is my game set properly? I can't hear myself.
You just cut out a little bit. You're fine.
You sound quite loud.
But you had
actually,
a question for Lonerbox, and I really want to get to that.
Lonerbox. Obviously, we're from the UK. If you can't tell, how much do you know about? Because it seemed like most of the blame that you were putting was on the government. How much do you know about kind of like the process of, I guess, integrating refugees into this country and like how we bring them over? Because my family are originally from Chile.
You cut out, or did you just stop there?
Thesis when
He
he was
said
at
his-
university.
Butters, fix your internet, goddammit.
God damn it.
You said your family's originally from Chile, and then you cut out.
Sure. Give me a second. I'm just going to turn down my game.
I don't think it's a game. But go on.
Hey Wick, I'm gonna run. The wife is
Sheila,
flagging me down.
Counterpoints.
I'm
Always
hoping
pleasure.
that this
Social
will go a
love.
little bit better for my microphone because I've turned down my gain.
Okay.
Okay.
Ask your question, buddy.
Sure. How much do you know about like the immigration process for refugees specifically? And I suppose like my question is, you seem to dismiss a lot of like the integration things and how much like responsibility the government has on there. Like, how much do you
For
know about that process?
specifically integrating refugees? Are you talking about citizenship tests or?
So I'm my main concern, and I suppose the thing that I want to highlight is I think the way that we bring people over is inherently just flawed. Um, I don't know where you're from. I'm from Birmingham, so I'm going to speak about specifically like Birmingham areas, and I know a little bit of northern areas. And when we bring over refugees, we generally find areas with a lot of council housing, and that's where we're just kind of dropping all of them off. So in Birmingham, historically, that was Lozells. Sheffield received quite a lot of Chilean refugees during the 70s. And I think like one of the big issues that we see, and I think around second generation immigrants specifically, is because the government is creating what are essentially kind of, I don't like using the term, but ghettos for refugees. So it's like we're going to shove all of these people into one area and we're essentially going to let them govern themselves because you've got a bunch of people who are all from one area that isn't part of our culture. They want to engage in their culture because you're letting them do it.
Are you talking about putting them in places like after they've been integrated, or after, or this is while they're being processed?
Kind of both, because a lot of people don't move. A lot of people don't move from like the area they're originally placed into, particularly if it's in counterpoints and things like that, because it's cheaper.
So you think they should find better places in the country to put them, or separate, or split them up, or what?
Yeah, splitting them up is kind of like my main issue here. And I'm wondering what your, I guess my question is, what are your thoughts kind of on that as a process, and if there's anything that we can formally do, if there's any like moral objections to, I guess like splitting people up and forcing them into areas where they aren't
So
having
just
to
breaking
engage
up the
with.
enclaves is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
basically.
making sure that they have to be dispersed within the wider British area instead of just
Yes.
being all sent to one place where they have their own little Pakistan,
Yeah,
right?
because that is a huge issue throughout Birmingham.
Okay.
Areas of Moseley, areas of Lozells. It's why we have Sharia courts like quite prominently in Birmingham. It's because we put everybody into one area, and if they're all together in this one area, they all come from a similar culture. They're going to want to continue their culture because they're not being forced to integrate into British culture. A lot of them don't know the language. Like my family coming to this country didn't know the language. If they'd have been put in Sheffield with a bunch of other Chilean people, I don't know if my grandma would speak English today.
What are your thoughts here, Loner?
So I think when America, obviously you had Italian Americans who became Americans. I don't think it was because they were forced to disperse. You still have like Little Italy and whatever, like Chinatown and shit like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think forcing like a kind of split up is really the best way to do it. I think you just need to find ways so that these places don't become segregated to the point where there's no interaction between them and the rest of the community. Obviously, I think language is probably one of the main things that should be a requirement. Like, I think you should, if you can't speak like the language of the country you're going to, you should be given like all the help in the world until you can, because you're basically like that's probably the one like level of conformity that I think is probably okay to ask for.
Do you
When
agree
you
with
say
that
Sharia courts in Birmingham, can you clarify what those courts do?
So basically, rather than having like a formal court, this is like an informal court within the area. It's like this is going to be a local leader or like a local, um, yeah, I guess like leader is kind of the best term there, and they will essentially act as kind of like a tribunal system within the area.
For what?
For basically families who are living in an area of general like similar Islamic cultures where they want to follow Islamic laws, and they'll go to those people and be like, "Hey, this is our dispute. We want you to resolve this because we don't want to get the police involved for whatever reason." And I think that's a huge issue, and police should be getting involved in some of these
Like
issues.
for criminal cases, like if someone rapes someone or like assaults someone, they do it through a Sharia court, and the cops just
No,
don't choose not to get involved, or
Not with like rape and things like that generally, although we do have a massive issue with like lack of reporting within these areas, which I think is also down to what you pointed out, the language barrier there. I think that's a huge issue, especially with women in Birmingham not being taught English and being like kind of discouraged from learning English, which prevents them from reaching out to the police who should resolve these issues.
My understanding of Muslims from polling is that when they talk about preferring Sharia, it's usually for pretty mundane shit. Like they want to do their finances like through a Sharia bank, or they want like a religious leader to handle their marriage disputes or whatever the fuck. But if we're talking about, I don't know. I feel like the different, like having an Arab area ish in a town, or a place where all the Polish people go to, because I guess they just feel safe. I think there's no problem with that. It's almost inevitable if you even just leave people to their own devices, because for every like black or Polish person I know, the reason they all live in the same area is because that's where they feel safer, right? Like that's it. Or just a little bit more welcome.
I would
So
agree with that in
that's
the
not
case
really
of
the issue. It's just that the issue is that if you have these separate areas, but local institutions, like they don't get involved with them. So obviously with the grooming issue, the issue wasn't just that the police were not were being negligent and victim blaming and all the rest of it. It's also that they didn't know how to interact with that community, and they didn't even really try to. They were just like, well, let's just talk to the imam, even though there were other groups there who wanted to talk to them, but they didn't get access. So I think you can have the area. You just need to have better connections between that area and the rest of the city.
I suppose, like, how would you go about establishing that? Because for me, like, my argument has always been like, we need to make sure these people are essentially not thrown into like one specific town or region or like suburb. We need to make sure these people are like spread out across the country so that they have English neighbors, so they have like English people they speak to, and they can interact with and like grow
Okay,
familiar with.
just being serious, how often? Maybe you're an exception, okay, but you are an exception depending on what your answer is. How often do you speak to your neighbors? Like, do you live in a block of flats, or?
I I grew up in council flats, so obviously in council flats we spoke to our neighbours because I was a child at the time, and my parents would all speak to. Sorry, I suppose it was just my mother would speak to all, like most of the neighbours there who are also like parents generally. Here I don't speak much to my neighbours, but my parents and my grandparents do.
Okay.
You cut out again.
No,
I'm just
I
gonna wait
heard
to
him.
see if he comes back.
Sure. Where did I cut out there? Sorry.
No, you.
I heard you
Yeah,
completely.
I heard him
but
fine.
I guess just
Oh,
repeat it. Yeah.
okay. No, that's
Sure.
okay.
I guess my answer, just to summarize, was quite a lot when I was living in council flats, and now I'm living in a suburb. My parents and my grandparents do because the neighbors are similar ages. There's like a 30-year age gap between me and my neighbors. I'm obviously not speaking to them.
Right. Again, with language, I'm happy to concede that. I think you should be encouraged to speak the language. I don't know if putting you in like as a brown person in a mostly white community is going to guarantee that. Like it would just be more your access to the workplace, or like even just like any kind of public interaction at all would encourage that. Or just if you're coming here like to work, then part of that work would entail either like a requirement, or if you're working a special job, then it would be like, well, we'll teach you to speak English, or for refugees especially. I think that's fine to do. I don't see an inherent problem with like an area that has mostly Polish people and a Polish shop. I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue is just the way that it's treated.
um, I do
Last
think there is
question, then we'll just
like
kind of wrap it up. But go ahead.
oh sorry, I do think there is a bit of an inherent issue there. Do you not see like do you not think there's an issue if these people are allowed to kind of create their own cultural senses outside of like the wider British culture, particularly if their culture isn't very liberal, which many of these cultures aren't.
Yeah, but
Especially
if they're like illiberal in what way? Because obviously, like I'm guessing you don't care about the concept of there being one neighborhood that has like a bunch of like Arab restaurants and some Arabic writing alongside the English on the front door. I don't think you care about that. I think if you're talking
if
about
it's along
illiberal
if
practices, then what are we talking about there? Like crime,
so if
or?
um my so if it this might be like specific to my region. Obviously, I'm from Birmingham. We are like essentially the dumping ground for a lot of the immigration in this country. Like our demographics are very skewed compared to the rest of the country. I think I'm simple off the top of my head. I think it's like we're 80 like plus white country. I could be mistaken on that, but in
We are.
Birmingham we are like less than 50%. So like the scale of immigration where I live is very skewed in one direction. And what we do have here is there aren't areas where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of like Arab buildings next to English buildings. It is you are walking for like 20 minutes, everything's in Arabic.
Okay.
Okay.
What? All right. you said illiberal practices. People speaking Arabic to their friends, that's not illiberal, right?
Yeah, obviously that's like as I mentioned, I'm from Chile. I speak Spanish at home. Got no issue with like people wanting to speak like language in their own home or like within their community. That makes sense. I'm like actually kind of ashamed of like how little Spanish I speak compared to my family. But like my issue is I suppose when we bring over refugees and things like that, they don't always have as much of a British culture as I would like some of these people to have. Like, I'd like them to believe in the same principles that we do, which are like largely free speech principles, things like that, which I hope you would agree with.
British don't
And I
believe in free
think that
speech,
when
but fair
we
enough.
bring some of these, pardon?
British don't believe in free speech, but fair enough. Carry on.
Whoa.
I will kind of like, yeah, I guess. I'll fight you like slightly.
Like
We'll
if you
fight
have a
later.
cop knocking
Go
on your,
ahead.
if a Sharia cop knocks on their neighbor's door because of a bad tweet, right? That's just them assimilating, right?
Sorry, what?
Okay.
Doesn't matter. It's about the non-crimes.
I'm
okay,
sorry
wait,
to interrupt.
You're talking about
Go ahead.
illiberal. You're talking about illiberal practices, okay?
Yeah.
But then you spoke about them speaking Arabic in the street. Like, what's the thing that they are doing that is like really fucking you up? Yeah.
Like, sorry, I'm not sure if you still in the UK. It is 1 a.m. Dev messaged me like 2 hours ago, being like, "Hey, do you want to join this stream?" I'm like, "I'm about to go to fucking bed, dude." My brain's walking slow. My issue is that I don't think these people are being forced to like integrate into the culture. My issue isn't that inherently, oh, they speak Arabic, this is wrong. It's you're living in an area where you don't have to interact with like the English at all, which means I don't think you become very English. I think you stay very Arab or wherever you're from.
Yeah, but what are they? I just need to know the illiberal practices that they're getting away with. Like, surely that's the issue, right?
I think like the liberal practices are things like the way they vote and like the way they influence politics in like a right wing
Can you
direction.
give us a specific example of that? Because the way they vote, what do you mean? Give us an example of something they vote on.
In the most recent election, I said Lonerbox. Are you still live in the UK or you live in the US? I don't know.
The 5 Gaza protest parties, right?
Well, to me, that was just like a bunch of like independent votes. Like in my
Yeah,
region,
yeah,
there were
yeah.
like two
Oh yeah, candidates. Yeah.
Yeah. I was about to give out the exact numbers. I'm not going to say the exact numbers because that might let people track down where I live. Like they were minorities, but like they were still getting like a decent chunk of the votes. Like they were doing better than UKIP were doing a few years ago. Which to me, like that's a bit of an issue when like I think this is a pretty fringe ideology among like the general British population. These people are getting the levels of significant votes. I think that kind of says something to who we bring over and to like how well they align with what the general British population wants.
Yeah. Again, if they're doing things as local MPs that are obviously out with the law and out with like whatever we would expect an MP to do, then that would be a huge problem. Again, so we're talking about how they vote. They vote for some of these guys were ex-Labor though, right? Like how many of them were? Some, not all of them though. Some of the independents were they just random Muslims, or I don't know where they all came from.
For the most part, like they were random. A lot of them were kind of like helicoptered in from places like London and stuff like that, and they were generally like representing fairly far right positions. But rather than like the Reform or UKIP far right, it was like I guess they still have like same overlap, but it was like the Islamic like religious.
Here's a
Yeah,
question.
so I know there was one guy who wanted to like so I'm just looking at the summaries of these guys. There was the guy from Leicester South who beat the Labour guy by 1,000 votes. He said that he wanted to use his voice to end arms to Israel. Good luck. He also wants to protect the NHS, promote affordable housing, help the youth, crime prevention, tackle cost of living. The fuck's this guy gonna do? Corbyn, obviously, that's whatever. Who's Ayub Khan? What did he do? He won in Birmingham by almost only a 500 vote gap. Okay. He spoke about Gaza. Apparently, he questioned the credibility of October 7th. That's pretty shit. Some Green Party people did that as well. Again, I don't know what he wore a fucking Palestinian flag. Yeah, I don't know what he's going to do. Again, if these people are doing legislation that's like anti-liberal or whatever, then that would be a big problem. I don't like these people. I don't really have much of a soft spot for them. But this isn't really explaining like surely there was an issue to you before these 4 or 5 guys won seats, right?
Let me
In terms of imposing illiberal practices on these areas.
sure. Let me
don't think-
interject
I
with a
don't think
question
they
that hold on, just real quick. Someone paid me money to ask this, so I'm gonna ask it. If Britain, if Britain became 51% Muslim, would it retain the current freedoms it has for sexual minorities and civil rights?
Gosh, probably not. It depends on how it happens, though, right? Depends on levels of integration. Depends on, just how we deal with that situation. Depends on how we deal with population growth. So far, they went from what 4% in about 2011, and now it's like 6.5. So,
Enough.
I mean, it might happen one day, but history's a
Okay.
unpredictable. Little
Sorry,
line,
I
isn't it?
didn't mean to. Well, I did mean to interrupt, but money's money. Go ahead, Butters.
Yeah, so I suppose I don't think they're implementing like any of these laws immediately. Obviously, like these are still minority and fringe groups that are still widely outnumbered by the British population. But like my fear and my concern is that like as we continue to bring in more and more of these people, if we don't find ways to integrate them, they are going to start voting for more and more of these fringe groups and more of like if fringe groups start becoming more of a majority within the government, then they are going to start passing like legislation. Like this was, I think, one of the big issues. If like parties like Reform and UKIP kind of get into power, it's like
Okay, yeah, that's the thing is like what we're talking about immediate. Okay, I'm sure. Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I know that if the UK became like 51% Muslim, probably be problems. Okay, I don't like Islam. I'm not a religious guy, especially not that kind of religion. But again, that's with 6.5% Muslim right now. America is a lot less white than the UK, and the biggest threat to their democracy is a bunch of fucking white people. Israel is 20% Arab Muslim, and the people threatening their democracy are a bunch of crazy settler fucking Jews. So I don't know. I feel like there are bigger issues and more immediate issues at hand right now than a hypothetical 51% Islamic. But if you want me to bite the bullet or whatever, it's like, yeah, I'm
I
not so progressive. I'm going to deny that I wouldn't want to live in a 51% Muslim country, but whatever.
sure, but like I think that my issue with arguing like, oh, this isn't like my number one issue is like, sure, it's not my number one issue either, but I still think it's an issue within the country. This is something that we do need to address. Like, yeah, there's probably other things that I would want to prioritize over this. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that we should also address this. Like, I think the government is capable of handling more than one, maybe not, given what we've seen from the government in the past however many years. But I think the government is theoretically capable of dealing with more than one issue at a time.
So what should we? Yeah. So what should this? Okay, but I don't know how this is an issue right now. So what should we do? What should the government do apart from? Do you think they should like it's okay if Muslim immigration goes up, but they're just separated across different communities, or?
Potentially, like if they are, I guess what sorry, I don't see an issue with someone who is Arab coming over from the UK if they are originally Muslim and they like eventually convert to I don't fucking know, like maybe they just stop being Muslim, maybe become Anglican. I don't really care, but like, so long as they start adapting to the culture of the UK for whatever means that is, I think that one of the best means that we can do that is to like try and break up some of these like segregated areas that we're building by just like throwing everybody into one area. Like obviously I named Lazelles as a singular example of that. I think like the government just needs to take action to make sure that these people are actually interacting with their neighbors.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah, no, I think with the Grooming Gang scandal, that was a good example of how I think local institutions can make more effort and establish more lines of communication between themselves and immigrant communities. I think it's probably fine if they live in their areas, at least. You know what? Solve racism, get rid of hate crimes against foreigners, and get rid of the prevent strategy and all this bullshit. And then we can probably think about scattering the Muslims so that they're only 10% of each town. I don't know if I need that. I don't think you need that kind of intense fucking social engineering to have the results that you're looking for. I think
like local economies when like so much of your population is are immigrants, things like that. That's particularly
Sorry, what?
refugees. You not think like it harms some of the local economies when so much of your population are refugees and things like that? I
If they're
want to specifically focus on refugees and not immigrants because I think
okay,
immigrants.
if they're
I like our
refugees,
immigration policy.
yeah, if they're refugees, obviously refugees are generally a cost. They're not brought for
Yes.
economic reasons. I don't know if they harm like a particular council's economy because I don't know what pays for keeping people as refugees. Like if you have a refugee and they're getting their allowance and they're getting processed, is that not the national government that deals with that? Because we have like the Home Office,
Yes,
don't we?
but like my
Sure.
my issue is that like how much these people contributing in terms of like high skill employment and like jobs that require higher education, things like that. Because I don't think a lot of these refugees.
Yeah, that's not the point, though. Refugees are less than 1% of the population. The point of them is not to really. Refugees are not supposed to be a gain. That's supposed to be like an act that we do as the international community to make sure that no one single country, every time there's a civil war somewhere, gets overwhelmed by double their population in migrants.
but I
That's the
don't-
point in the UN. That's why we agreed to the UN Convention on Refugees so long ago, is because that seems to be the most ethical way to do it. But we don't bring refugees here expecting them to like be a net gain
I agree
financially.
with that, but I also think that is one of the reasons why you need to make sure they're not dumped into one area. Because if you dump a bunch of people who we expect to be like net losses, and yes, I agree that we should bring in refugees. My family are refugees. I'm not gonna say we should not have refugees. That would be very, very bad for me. But I do think that we need to make sure that these people aren't always being dumped into singular areas where they are
Spread
net
them
gains on
out.
the
Spread
economy
the
and it's-
icing
Do we-
on the cake to the whole
so
cake.
Here, let me hop in real quick, because
Go
that
ahead,
is what we
Dan.
do in Canada, right? When we take refugees, we do actually spread them across Canada and put them in different cities.
Yeah, but where are most of the asylum seekers in the UK? Where's these? Do we not have
London,
refugees and asylum seekers all over the UK?
We do, but I think that they have a like very high concentration in London and Birmingham because we have a lot of council housing here as well. And council
But
housing
these are also the two
residents.
biggest. Wait, is Birmingham the second biggest city?
Yes, it is.
So you're going to have higher numbers
Yes,
in
it
the
is.
two biggest cities.
Birmingham,
But
yeah,
where are
but
the?
Birmingham is the second biggest city.
Can I see stats on this? Is there like if there's a
what do
place
you-
where there's like a disproportionate amount of refugees going, and that's constantly what they do, then yeah, we should probably go somewhere else. But like I don't know what this is based on.
So specifically refugees, Los Angeles was a very, very big hotspot for that during mostly during the 70s. It still kind of has economic issues, or some of that's going to be. Obviously, I'm not going to blame the entire last 50 years on just that, but that was a factor in like the
Yeah, but I'm trying to see where all these refugees are being concentrated, because there's so few of them in the entire country. Like, yeah, 400,000. Like, even if they were all in London, that would be not the biggest proportion of the population. But
Sure, but
yeah,
if you're talking like London as a whole, like my issue is that they don't put them into like they're not even spreading them out in London, a place like that generally, or at least my experience from Birmingham is they put them into like a specific suburb, and that suburb gets like completely crushed.
is there something that you can link me so I can read about this? Like, what do you mean a suburb being crushed? I don't understand.
So
British on British violence, gang. We're here
Yeah,
for it. It's very polite, but you know.
uh,
Yeah, do you have a source on this?
Is it you're being very vague? That's the problem I'm having. I'm not even disagreeing with you. I just yeah.
yes, like I'm gonna like straight apologize. I was not prepared to come into this. Obviously,
Okay.
I got a message like 2 hours ago.
We'll tell you what, we can have this conversation when you're more prepared, right? We don't have to have it right now.
Sure, I would be happy to do that. If you'd
Set
be
it.
happy to do that as well.
Okay. Well, gang. Been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on, Loner. Did we not address something that we should have addressed? Any of you, right? Is there something that we should have talked about tonight that we did not? Anything?
Sargon's a bit of a retard, isn't he?
We did discuss
we already
that.
did that.
Yeah, we did that one. We covered it. Okay.
So,
I wish he had come on. I wish he had
just
come
I
on.
always want to like bring this up as like the stupidest fucking thing he said. It was a I would have to track this down. It was on Facebook. Stockman's such fucking illiberal motherfucker that he believes that immigrants should not speak other languages in the privacy of their own home if they live in England.
Okay, gang,
Oh,
we're gonna
Jesus.
cut off the Sargon hate. Like, I do want him on my show at some point, right? Like, I would like to have a
You don't want to
discussion
burn
with
the
him,
bridge right away,
right? I just
I'll burn my
I
bridge.
do think though he should apologize for calling someone a rape denialist. Right?
Yeah, I don't know who.
He should
was
probably
it-
apologize for that. But
which person was he aiming that at anyway?
I don't know. So it is what it is. I'd love to talk to him about his thoughts if he thinks that Loner's a big fat lefty or something, or he thinks that you are scumfuck, or I don't know, right? Like I'd be happy.
Well,
to
it's
hear
a
about
rape denier. That's the accusation.
a rape
isn't it?
denier, yeah. But okay, gang. It's the weekend. I'm not gonna stream on the weekend. I love you all. We're gonna raid out. We're gonna talk to you guys later. And I'll see you guys next week. Next week, I have some
Well,
great
actually,
play. Oh,
before you go, just real quick, Lonerbox, you're a Fabian, right? I have that correct?
No,
Oh fuck. Okay,
like
sorry.
a social democrat.
Okay, no fuck. I thought you were a Fabian socialist. My bad. Because
Maybe maybe in my youth. Yeah.
maybe in your youth. Yeah. Okay. No, because I know, like,
I mean, Fabians are kind of reformist, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
So I know that Sargon's view of Fabians is that they're basically just like Stalinists, but they're in hiding. They're like hiding their power level. So maybe that's what he views you as. I don't fucking know.
Listen, I don't really want to understand what's happening in that head.
okay. I'll see you
Fucking
guys
monkey
later.
crushing symbols.
We got some great stuff coming up next week. Next week, we're going to talk to Harmony Ginger. We're going to talk to Richard Witters and a few others about colonialism and gaming. Ooh, it's going to be fun. So tune in for that. It should be fun. That'll be on Tuesday. But other than that, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye, everyone.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.